Chapter 25-21. Since you know that I am Jun Lioye, then you should know that your father and mother are still in my hands. You tried to assassinate me without a care in the world, wholeheartedly seeking death. Aren't you afraid that I'll take revenge on your father and mother, making them wish they were dead? Ji Yu's body stiffened, but she immediately spat out with hatred. Jun Lioye, my father and mother have already been killed. Don't even think of using them to threaten me. Who told you that they're already dead? Jun Lioye raised a brow. A devil like you has never left anyone alive in your hands. The rulers of the other countries have all been killed by you. It seems like you still know a bit about me. However, there are always exceptions to everything. Perhaps your parents are an exception? Jun Lioye looked at her wrapped hands and leisurely blew on them. Ji Yu's heart jumped. She was already certain that her parents were dead, which was why she tried so hard. Now that she heard him say this, her heart faintly rose with a trace of hope. Why are my parents an exception? Her little face was still pale, but her tone finally softened. Jun Lioye's eyes were as deep as the night as he stared at her face. Suddenly, he gently smiled and reached out to gently lift her sharp chin. His tone seemed to be both true and false. Because of you. His words seemed to be filled with affection. If it was in the past, Ji Yu's eyes might have lit up at his words. But now, she only sneered, I don't believe you. Jun Lioye, from now on, I won't believe a single word you say. Jun Lioye looked at her for a moment. He could no longer see the slightest bit of trust in her eyes. Although she was still in his arms, her body was abnormally stiff, as if she was trying her best to put some distance between them. She was no longer like before, fearlessly throwing herself into his arms to seek protection. His eyes darkened, and he suddenly lifted her up. This prince will take you to a place. Ji Yu never thought that she would be able to return to the palace she had lived in since she was young. Jun Lioye brought her here and even disguised her so that people who weren't familiar with her wouldn't be able to recognize her. At this moment, she was wearing the clothes of a normal guard as she followed behind Jun Lioye, passing through palace doors and courtyards. Jun Lioye appeared in his original appearance. He wore a beautiful black robe embroidered with python patterns and wore a ghost mask. He was clearly such a refined and elegant person, but after wearing this outfit, every inch of him seemed to have an inexplicable tension, giving people a kind of cold pressure. Along the way, they would occasionally bump into soldiers from the Huiyue kingdom. However, the moment they saw him, they would all respectfully bow and kowtow. At first glance, one could tell that these guards were extremely well trained. No matter what they did, they were neat and tidy, carrying the silent, murderous aura of an iron-blooded soldier. Ji Yu lowered her eyes and followed behind him. Looking at him striding forward, she quietly clenched her fists. This was the real him, right? This made him look like the god of slaughter of this continent. Just like in the legends, he was cold-blooded and ruthless, not even recognizing his own kin. And that seductive, romantic, and lazy Yi Qianshang was nothing more than an illusion he made, an illusory character. Ji Yu followed him to the gates of the Han Liang Palace. There was a guard every 3 steps and a sentry every 2 steps. It was clearly heavily guarded. Jun Lioye waved his hand and made a simple gesture. The guards at the door pushed open the palace doors and silently retreated far away. Jun Lioye looked at Ji Yu behind him and softly said, Go in. This king will give you 10 minutes to catch up. Chapter 25-22. Ji Yu paused for a moment. Looking at the open palace door, her heart began to beat wildly. Are my parents really still alive? Right here. She made up her mind and strode into the palace. Ji Yu finally saw her parents. In just a few days, they had lost a lot of weight, looked a lot haggard, and also a lot older. Fortunately, they were still alive. They were alive and well. Her eyes were brimming with tears. The reunion of father and daughter was unavoidable. Jun leaned against the door leisurely, as if he was bored to death, and twirled the emerald green thumb ring on his thumb. The guards here were obviously his most loyal subordinates. It was strange for him to bring a soldier here in the middle of the night and let this soldier enter the hall where the serious criminals were locked up alone. But these guards were all blind and pretended not to see anything. After about 10 minutes, Ji Yu still had no intention of coming out. Jun Liuye's eyelashes drooped as he suddenly strode inside. Inside the palace, the full moon emperor and the queen were saying goodbye to their daughter. After the initial excitement, they were still very puzzled. What was their daughter's identity now? How did she break through the heavy guards and enter? Ji Yu did not want her parents to worry about her, so she wanted to mumble, "Someone help me." Who helped us? The full moon emperor's eyes lit up. He had been locked up here for so long, but he did not see anyone from his own side. If there was such a force outside, maybe he could make use of it. I am. The two cold words blew into the palace. The full moon emperor froze. He looked at the tall man, standing at the door with his back against the light, and clenched his fists in his sleeves. The enemy who destroyed his country. The god-killing Jun Liuye. Ji Yu also froze. She suddenly looked up, not understanding his purpose at this time. Jun Liuye walked in slowly and elegantly, like a leopard in the night. The full moon emperor subconsciously protected his daughter and retreated. What are you doing? Don't hurt my princess. Jun Liuye stopped and looked at Ji Yu. He said with a faint smile, "Come here. It's time for you to go out with me." His voice was soft but inexplicably cold. Her parents' lives were still in his hands. Ji Yu did not dare to resist him. She bit her lips and comforted her parents. Finally, she walked to his side. Jun Liuye wrapped his arms around her waist and left. Jun Liuye, what did you do to my daughter? Why is she so obedient to you? Emperor Yuanyu shouted from behind. Jun Liuye paused and chuckled. She will be my woman. This was obviously a bomb. The Emperor Yuanyu and his wife were stunned, and Ji Yu's body froze. The full moon emperor shouted angrily, "Ji Yu will never marry the enemy who destroyed her country." Jun Liuye didn't say anything else. Instead, he dragged the unwilling Ji Yu away. The full moon emperor was trembling with anger. Just as Jun Liuye left, a guard walked in and coldly told them not to make trouble. Otherwise, their daughter would be humiliated and would never be able to wash away her shame. Emperor Full Moon was so angry that he almost fainted, but there was nothing he could do. The lights in the dark shadow tower flickered. Outside, it was the darkest period before dawn. "I will never marry you." Ji Yu reiterated her point for the third time. On the way back, she had already expressed herself sternly twice, but Jun Liuye did not seem to have heard her. Chapter 25-23. Now that they were back in the dark shadow tower, Ji Yu's familiar room, she felt a bit more at ease. At the same time, she could no longer suppress the anger at her heart. Jun Liuye, I won't marry a despicable person like you. Jun Liuye sat down at the table and poured himself a cup of tea. After taking a sip, he pushed the cup of tea over. "You've been shouting the entire way. Are you thirsty? Come, drink this." Ji Yu's face turned red from anger. She slammed the cup of tea on the ground, and it shattered, making a loud sound. She also raised her voice to its loudest. "Who's drinking your thing? It's dirty to death." "Dirty?" Jun Liuye reached out and grabbed her wrist. He pulled her into his embrace and kissed her without waiting for her to react. This kiss was different from any other kiss. It was filled with a strong will. Ji Yu struggled with all her might, but she was still kissed until she couldn't breathe. Their lips and tongues intertwined. Her nose was filled with his scent and his taste. Her mind buzzed, and she used all her strength, but she still couldn't break free from his entanglement. Big drops of tears rolled down her cheeks and flowed into their entangled lips and tongues. It was salty and bitter. Jun Liuye paused for a moment and finally let go of her. However, he continued to hug her and said in a domineering voice, "Ji Yu, from now on, you are my woman. I am your sky." Ji Yu's eyes were filled with anger. She raised her hand to slap his face. "Don't even think about it." Her hand was caught by him, and he looked at her. "Little moon, didn't you want to marry me? We once swore an oath of eternal love." Ji Yu's wrist hurt from his grip, but it couldn't compare to the pain in her heart. She said word for word, "Jun Liuye, the one who pledges love to me, was Yi Qianshang, not you." Jun Liuye's eyes narrowed. "Am I not Yi Qianshang?" "No, you're not him. He's already dead." Yi Qianshang was just a picture he painted for her. he didn't actually exist. She would rather believe that he was dead, that he died on the way to assassinate Junya. Junya was silent for a few seconds before revealing a soft smile. That's fine. His arm loosened, and Jiyu hurriedly jumped away from him, leaving a distance of 3 meters between them. Jun Liuye had no intention of grabbing her again. He simply said, "Since you think he's dead, then I don't have to abide by the agreement between you and him. I won't marry you." You seemed to be relieved. "I won't marry you either." Her tone was like she had just thrown away a pile of garbage. Jun Liuye glanced at her and did not say anything else. Instead, he stood up, opened the door, and clapped twice. Men. 2 guards appeared silently outside the door and bowed. "Master, what are your orders?" This was how the Dark Shadow Tower addressed Yi Qianshang. Jun Lu Yi said, "Pass down this prince's decree. Transfer the original Gu country's monarch and his wife to the water prison and await their punishment." Jiyu's heart was beating wildly. She rushed to the door and shouted, "What are you doing?" Jun Liuye crossed his arms and looked at her coldly. "Naturally, I'll deal with them according to how this prince handled things. Based on how he used to deal with things, how could her parents survive?" Jiyu gritted her teeth. "Jun Liuye, they're already so pitiful. Do you even have any sympathy?" Jun Liuye acted like he had heard a joke that couldn't be any funnier. "Sympathy? Jiyu, you can't have sympathy on the battlefield." Chapter 25-24. Jun Liuye seemed to have heard the funniest joke in the world. Sympathy? Jiyu, you can't afford to have sympathy on the battlefield. When have you ever heard of the killing god Azura having sympathy? Jiyu glared at him, her chest heaving up and down in anger. "What do you want?" Jun Liuye returned to his chair and sat down, calmly saying, "You know what I want." Jiyu, the 2 guards looked at each other and disappeared in a flash. Jiyu was afraid that they would harm her parents, so she clenched her fists. "Jun Liuye, if you dare to harm my parents, I won't let you off even if I die and become a ghost." Jun Liuye flicked his fingernails. "I'm not afraid of you when you're alive, but you think you can do anything to me when you're dead? Naive." At this time, he was simply a demon. Jiyu hated him so much that she clenched her teeth, but there was nothing she could do. Her chest was filled with anger, but she couldn't find a way out. She wasn't afraid of death, but her parents. How on earth did she provoke such a demon? She suddenly tasted something sweet in her throat. Then her body trembled, and she spat out a mouthful of blood. Jun Liuye's eyes darkened, and his fingers moved slightly as if he wanted to do something, but he didn't. He only calmly said, "Jiyu, a wise man submits to circumstances. Seeking death is the behavior of a coward. You should know what to do next." Jiyu's entire body was trembling, but she had no choice but to accept this cruel reality. "What do you want? What will it take for you to let my parents go?" Her parents' safety was her weak spot. Jun Liuye stood up and slowly walked in front of her. His eyes locked onto hers as he lifted her chin with his finger. "I want you. Be my woman, and I'll give you a day to think about it. Give me an answer tomorrow night." Without waiting for Jiyu to speak, he turned around and walked out. "Jiyu didn't give up. Jun Liuye, didn't you say that you won't marry me?" Jun Liuye paused for a moment before saying, "Indeed, I won't marry you. I just want you to be my woman." He then left with large strides. He won't marry me, but wants me to be his woman. Does that mean he wants me to be his concubine? Perhaps she can't even be considered a concubine. Even if he needs to marry her, he still needs to go through the motions. Jiyu clenched her fists so tightly that her knuckles turned pale. There was white steam in the hall and fresh blue petals floating in the bathtub. The bathtub. "Miss Ji, please take a bath and change your clothes." The 2 maids bowed to Jiyu, who was sitting on the chair in a daze. Jiyu closed her eyes and stood Liuye's bathtub. The 2 maids wanted to help her take off her clothes, but she stepped aside and said, "I'll do it myself. Get out." After all, she was once a princess. Once her little face tightened, there was a kind of majestic aura. The 2 maids looked at each other and agreed. They put a set of clothes on the shelf next to them. "Miss, you can change into this after washing." Use of it. Of, use you, of her, you. I Scott of her, st her, you, her, you, of course. She groggily thought about it for an entire day. When June Liuya came again at night, she finally gave him a satisfactory answer. She didn't have a second choice. June Liuya seemed to have expected her to be like this. He smiled and said, I'll be waiting for you at Star Moon Pavilion. Then he left. Chapter 25:25. Then the maids came in and began to take care of everything for her. They brought her to this special bath and let her bathe in petals, saying that His Highness liked the smell of the blue petals. Ji didn't know what kind of flower these petals were, but the smell was somewhat familiar. It was faint and fragrant, like it came from his body. She used to like the smell very much, but now she felt a little disgusted by it. She scooped up all the petals and threw them out. Not a single petal was left. The petals scattered on the ground, and many of them still had water droplets, like the helpless tears of a beauty. The fragrance of the flower lasted for a long time, and the whole hall was filled with the faint fragrance of the petals, making her unable to escape. Ji simply sank her head into the water, wanting to avoid the omnipresent fragrance, wanting to escape from the fate that she couldn't escape. The water rippled around her body, and she gradually felt suffocated, but she didn't want to go out. The water was warm, like a mother's embrace, making her greedy. She was already suffocating, but her body curled up tighter and tighter in the water. She gradually felt dizzy, and her consciousness was drifting away. It would be good if she just fell asleep like this. Maybe when she woke up, she would find that nothing had happened, and she would still be the carefree little princess of Jiu country, acting coquettishly in front of her parents. And the one she loved said that he wanted to marry her. Splash. With a splash, someone grabbed her arm and lifted her out of the water. Fresh air rushed in, and she coughed loudly. Her naked body was half exposed to the air, and she shivered a few times. Damn it, do you want to drown yourself in it? An angry shout exploded in her ears. Jiu opened her eyes and looked up at him. He was wearing a brand new purple robe, which was very luxurious. The material of the robe was smooth and soft, and it was outlined with golden and silver threads with a dragon soaring into the clouds. In the dim candlelight, with his movements, the dragon seemed to be alive as it moved. His hair was tied up with a purple cloud crown, and his black hair flowed behind him, which made him even more picturesque, charming, and enchanting. At this moment, that pair of slightly evil eyes narrowed dangerously, and his thin lips were tightly pursed, showing his anger. Jiu's shoulder was a little painful from his grip, and she struggled in his hand. Let go of me! Should he let her go and let her sink back in the bathtub to drown? June Liuya's hand was still clasped around her. His voice was cold as he said, You want to die? You don't care about your parents anymore? His finger brushed across her pale lips. Jiu, don't blame this king for not reminding you. If you want to die, this king will not stop you, but after you die, your parents will also be buried with you. Furthermore, he died in exactly the same way as you did. His fingers loosened, and he finally let her go. Jiu sank into the water weakly, but he didn't look at her anymore and strode away. Yes, she didn't even have the right to die now. Jiu closed her eyes. She really wanted to cry like a child who had been wronged, but no matter how much she cried, no one would coax her like a baby. She could only cry in her heart. After June Liuya left, the maids came in. Jiu was like a wooden doll, allowing them to dry her body, change into new clothes for her, tie up her hair for her, and dress her up. Miss G, look at how beautiful you are now. When the maids had finished dressing her, they pressed a looking glass into her hand for her to see. Chapter 25:26. The mirror fell from her clothes, and she stood up without even looking at it. Bring me to the Star Moon Pavilion. The Star Moon Pavilion, it was the most majestic pavilion in the Dark Shadow Tower. When June Liuya was still Yi Qianshang, he had once brought her here to play. The interior of the pavilion was beautiful and ingenious, especially the movable roof. When night fell, the roof would automatically slide to the sides, revealing transparent crystal windows. Outside the windows, the sky would be filled with stars, or the moonlight would be like water. Whether it was the starlight or the moonlight, Under the reflection of the crystal, they would all shine brightly and beautifully. Ji used to like this place very much. She had once told Yi Qianshang that this was the most humane place in his dark shadow tower. "Miss Ji, please come in. His Highness is waiting for you." The maid sent her downstairs and didn't send her any further. For these people, the Star Moon Pavilion was a forbidden area. Without his permission, no one was allowed to enter. Ji Yu pursed her lips. Ever since Jun Liuye revealed his identity in front of her, he no longer hid it. Even in the Dark Shadow Tower, his subordinates and attendants had collectively changed the way they addressed him and addressed him as Your Highness. These people were all his loyal subordinates, so they naturally knew his identity. Perhaps she was the only one in the entire Dark Shadow Tower that was kept in the dark. She walked into the building and walked up the stairs covered in a soft carpet. She arrived at the most conspicuous and luxurious room on the 3rd floor. Although she was mentally prepared, she was still a bit afraid when it really came to this step. She waited at the door for a long time, but she didn't have the courage to open it. There was no movement from the hall, as if that person wasn't waiting for her inside. Perhaps he really wasn't inside? After a while, Ji Yu steeled her heart and pushed open the door to walk in. Passing by a tortoise-shell screen, Ji Yu stopped. There weren't any candles in the hall, but it wasn't dark at all. The purple moon above her head was like a jade plate, sparing no effort to shine its moonlight into every corner of the hall. The hall had also been redecorated. There was a large bed without any bed curtains in the hall. The bed was covered in soft and new bedding. Not far from the bed was a lotus leaf table carved from purple jade. There were 2 small wine cups on the table, and a purple-robed Jun Liuye was sitting at the table drinking. Moonlight, starlight, a gentleman drinking wine. No matter how she looked at it, it was like a dream of a young girl, but Ji Yu was not moved by the scene in front of her. Her footsteps seemed to be fixed in place, and she did not want to take another step forward. Jun Liuye looked her up and down. His lips curled up as he beckoned her over. "Come here." Ji Yu took a deep breath and didn't move. Jun Liuye's expression did not change as he asked, "What? Are you regretting it now?" His voice was slightly cold. "It's not too late for you to regret it. I won't force you." Would he really not force her? Ji Yu's eyes lit up. She regretted it the moment she came in. She grew up in the depths of the palace. Her parents loved her like a pearl and a treasure. They did not allow her to come into contact with anything that would pollute her eyes. Therefore, she was still ignorant about this matter. When she was traveling with Yi Qianshang, although Yi Qianshang took advantage of her, he didn't take the final step. He only gave her a general idea. In her heart, this kind of thing was extremely sacred and could only be done with her sweetheart on their wedding night. But now, when she heard him say that he wouldn't force her and that she could still regret it, she let out a sigh of relief. She was afraid that he would regret it as she turned to leave. Chapter 25-27. Jun Liuye's handsome face turned dark before he said something that stopped her in her tracks. "As long as you walk out of this door, there will be nothing between us. Everything will be done according to the law." Ji Yu slowly turned around. Despicable. Jun Liuye ignored her burning eyes and raised his wine cup. "Come, have a drink with me." Ji Yu stood there without moving. Jun Liuye smiled and looked at her, then at the bed beside her. "Or do you want to directly go to bed with me?" Ji Yu clenched her fists tightly and closed her eyes. "Wine will only be drunk when it meets a bosom friend. Then what do you think I am?" His voice slowly approached. "Enemy. You are an absolutely irreconcilable enemy." Ji Yu did not hide her words. "You don't like me anymore?" His voice was already close to her ear, and one of her small hands was held, passively clasped on her chest. "Ji Yu, ask me about this, and then answer me honestly. You don't love me at all." Ji Yu suddenly opened her eyes and met his eyes right in front of hers. That pair of eyes was as deep as the sea and shined under the moonlight. It was just like that night when he held her while looking at the moon. A girl's dream lover. She had once loved him so much. How could she not love him just because she said so? She had even made a vow for this love. Love should be pure, but his love was nothing more than a scam. She was only a chess piece in his grand scheme. So she would rather not have this love. Even if she was drenched in blood, She would cut off this malignant tumor in her heart. She looked naive, but there was a resolute side to her bones. So she took a step back and said word by word, "June Lioye, I don't like you. I don't love you at all. I hate you. I want you to die." The girl's voice was powerful. June Lioye looked down at the petite girl and did not speak for a while. After a while, he lightly said, "Then do you still want to be this king's woman?" Jiyu choked. June Lioye sat back down at the table and raised his wine cup. "This king will give you one more chance. If you want to be this king's woman, then come and drink this cup. If you don't want it, you can turn around and go back." Her parents' lives were in his hands, so Jiyu couldn't turn around. She closed her eyes, and when she opened them again, her eyes were pitch black, without a trace of light. She slowly said, "I have a condition." June Lioye only had one simple word: speak. Jiyu took another deep breath. "Let my parents go." June Lioye's hand, that was holding the wine cup, paused. "This prince will think of something." Try? He was obviously dealing with her. Wasn't the life and death of her parents in his hands? The question in her eyes was too obvious, and June Lioye understood it. His gaze became complicated. "Jiyu, some things aren't as simple as you think. Since I've made a promise to you, I'll naturally find a way to do it. Not now." There was no room for negotiation, so Jiyu had to settle for the next best thing. "Then I want to see my parents once a day. See you in 5 days." This prince allows you to see your parents once every 5 days. June Lioye pondered for a moment before replying. In the end, Jiyu was still inexperienced and had no experience in negotiating with people, especially when the other party was an old fox like June Lioye. She was even less of an opponent. After a round of back-and-forth bargaining, Jiyu finally settled on seeing her parents once every 3 days. Chapter 25-28. After this exchange, the atmosphere between the two eased up quite a bit and was no longer as tense as before. "All right, I've agreed to your conditions. Shouldn't you come over and have a drink with me?" June Lioye smiled. His appearance was already enough to topple cities, and under the moonlight, his smile was even more dazzling, just like the youth who had traveled hand in hand with her. Jiyu's heart trembled, and she tightly pursed her lips. But then she lowered her eyes. Right now, he was no longer the youth who had discussed marriage with her, but the cold-blooded god of war who had destroyed her country. She could only rely on her own body to fight for a chance of survival for her parents. They were no longer on equal footing. In his eyes, she was probably just a woman who could be dispensable. She was very angry, but there was nothing she could do. In the end, she still walked towards him and passively picked up the cup of wine he handed to her. Following the posture he said, she passively drank it. It was clearly her favorite fruit wine, but now it tasted bitter and astringent in her mouth. Her heart also seemed to be filled with bitterness. The wine cup fell to the ground. He bent over and picked her up. His embrace was hot, but her body was slightly cold. He carried her and spun around the room. The purple moon above his head seemed to spin with him. The moonlight was divided into small pieces by the crystal like starlight. "Jiyu, this Star Moon Pavilion is a forbidden area. Other than me, only you can enter. Don't you think the purple moon in the sky is special when you look at it like this?" He whispered in her ear, his voice low and hoarse. After Jiyu fell into his arms, she closed her eyes, no longer looking and no longer listening. Kisses fell on her eyelashes, the tip of her nose, chin, and cheeks like the touch of butterflies. Hot air blew. A faint cold fragrance filled the air, and waves of heat and numbness. His movements were very gentle, as if he was protecting a treasure in the palm of his hand. Jiyu didn't move, letting him do as he pleased. She suddenly felt a sharp pain in her ear. He had actually bitten her. Jiyu's body couldn't help but shrink back. She opened her eyes and angrily said, "You." As soon as she said that word, she felt her body suddenly sink. In the blink of an eye, she was fiercely pressed onto the bed by him. She widened her eyes in shock. His handsome face was already in front of her, less than an inch away from her. His body pressed down on hers. She instinctively wanted to struggle, but he held her hands tightly with one hand and easily locked them above her head. This action caused her chest to involuntarily puff out. His gaze rested on her chest, carrying a kind of fire that was determined to obtain. This kind of gaze made Ji-Yu's hair stand on end, and blood rushed to her cheeks, turning them red. "You?" She wriggled under his body and lifted her leg to push him away, but as soon as she lifted her leg, it was caught by his leg, and she couldn't move anymore. This position was unprecedentedly ambiguous. Ji-Yu was flustered and confused. Her face was so red that it seemed like it was about to burn. His black eyes stared at her, and there seemed to be something surging in the depths of his eyes. Ji-Yu's body almost shrank under his gaze. He kissed her with a feverish fire, which was different from his usual calmness. It was as if a wanderer who had been thirsty for days had finally found a sweet water source and wanted to suck her dry. It was also as if an unfathomable sea wanted to drown her completely. In the intense kiss, he lifted her clothes with his fingertips, and it was instantly scattered. Her clothes were peeled off layer by layer like petals. His fingers also moved up, wandering around the sensitive parts of her body. Chapter 25-29. In the end, Ji was still a virgin. Although she hated him and did not want to give him any reaction, her immature body would not be affected by her rationality. Her instincts were easily aroused by him. Although she tried her best to endure, her breathing became faster and faster with his movements. Her jade-like skin was covered in sweat and turned a faint pink. His kisses were everywhere. Gradually, from top to bottom, he occupied inch by inch and lost inch by inch. Her body began to tremble slightly. She wanted to struggle, but she did not have the strength. Ji was embarrassed, angry, and panicked. She wanted to kick him again, but she was restrained and could not complete that simple action. He kissed her. Ji did not expect him to do this. Her heart almost jumped out her chest. There seemed to be a huge flood in her body, washing through her limbs and bones. Gradually, it gathered at a certain place. Under his kiss, her waist became tighter and tighter. Her breathing became faster and faster. Her bright and beautiful eyes seemed to be floating with water. Finally, she opened her mouth slightly and completely broke down. That unfamiliar feeling was like a flood in her body. It washed away her defenses, washed away her stiffness, and also washed away her rationality. He also took this opportunity to hug her and whispered in her ear, "Ji, feel me. I will give you the greatest happiness." Ji trembled and opened her eyes. What she saw was his eyes that were as deep as the sea, surging with waves. He kissed her again and swallowed her cries of pain. Ji vaguely heard him sigh in satisfaction. "Little moon, you finally belong to me." It was a night of ups and downs. Ji did not know how she fell asleep. When she woke up, it was already late in the morning. When she opened her eyes, the roof was already closed. There was only a luminous pearl in the clamshell in the hall. It was half bright and half dark. Jun Liuye was not in the hall. He had already left. Was it night or day? Ji turned over and was about to get off the bed. However, when she lifted the blanket, she could not help but moan softly. Her whole body was sore. Her originally snow-white body was full of his kiss marks. It reminded her of how crazy he was last night. She closed her eyes and adjusted her breathing on the bed. She was a bit self-deprecating. What was she doing? If she gave her body to him, what would she do in the future? Would she become his woman just like that? She couldn't accept it. But what could he do even if he was unwilling? She didn't even have the right to die. The merciless reality was right in front of her. She, who was once pure and innocent, did not want to face it, nor did she have the courage to face it. However, she no longer had the opportunity to escape. A chance encounter that shouldn't have happened, accompanied by a brief moment of sweetness, brought about eternal suffering in the heart. Perhaps he didn't love her. Otherwise, he wouldn't treat her like this. Perhaps he would kick her away when she was old. He held a high position and was ambitious. In the future, he would definitely not be an ordinary person. If she wanted to marry him in the future, there would be many women around him. Perhaps he was only interested in her for a moment, and after that, he would throw her away The enmity between them was irreconcilable, but she had no hope of revenge. Her future was dark. The door of the hall creaked, and the light flickered for a moment before it dimmed again. A person walked in. You didn't need to open her eyes to know who came in. Her body subconsciously shrank into the quilt. She closed her eyes tightly, but her eyelashes were trembling violently. Chapter 25:30. The man stood in front of her bed for a while before sighing. You can't pretend to be asleep. Are you thirsty? Jiyu shrunk back into the blanket like an ostrich. She did not open her eyes or open her mouth. You're like this? Do you want me to use a special method to get you up? He chuckled. He held the corner of her blanket with one hand and pretended to lift it up. Jiyu was shocked. She quickly opened her eyes and stiffly replied, I'm not thirsty. She said she was not thirsty, but her throat was a little dry. Last night's madness seemed to have squeezed out all the water in her body. Junliuya looked at her for a moment, then suddenly leaned down and kissed her. She subconsciously wanted to resist, but he quickly pried open her teeth and a sweet stream of water flowed into her mouth. It was her favorite Baiwa green tea. She was forced to swallow it and open her eyes to glare at him. He was still holding a cup in his hand. There were ripples in the cup. He smiled viciously. Do you want me to feed you water like this? Jiyu angrily snatched the cup and drank the water in the cup in a fit of pique. Junliuya sat on the side of the bed and looked at her. He reached out and touched her cheek. You've lost some weight. My hand is a little heavy. I think you should eat more. Jiyu slapped his hand away and coldly said, You should fulfill your promise. Junliuya raised an eyebrow. I want to see my parents. Junliuya looked her up and down. You still have strength? Jiyu stared at him without saying anything. Junliuya could not help but want to pinch her. Okay, as long as you have strength, I'll take you there. Jiyu sighed in relief. Go out. I'll change my clothes. Junliuya did not want to move. Which part of your body haven't I seen? Why are you being shy now? Jiyu bit her lip and continued to glare at him. Junliuya could only surrender. Okay, I'll go out. He strode out. Looking at his back, Jiyu's eyes were filled with hatred and confusion. Her fingers clenched in the quilt once again. No matter what, she had to save her parents. This was the only thing keeping her alive. Jiyu was sick. The repeated scares, the repeated injuries, the worry for her parents, and the despair of her future finally defeated her. Ever since she came back from visiting her parents in the palace, she had been listless. She locked herself in her room and did not come out. She also did not eat much. Junliuya was extremely busy. After he brought Jiyu back, he handed her over to a few of his trusted maids and told them to take care of her while he went out to work. He didn't return until 2 days later. The first thing he did when he came back was to check on her. He found her slumped on the bed, looking like a flower that had lost its moisture. She didn't even bat an eyelid when he came in. Junliuya naturally did not expect her to stand up and greet him like a little wife, but this complete disregard made him feel somewhat disappointed. Junliuya's eyes narrowed dangerously. Before he left, he instructed these maids to prepare more delicious tonics for Jiyu to eat, to make her whiter and fatter. Unexpectedly, when they met again 2 days later, she was even thinner than before. Her face was sickly pale, and she looked malnourished. These maids did not dare to disobey his orders, as could be seen from the few tonics on the table that had already cooled down. She was the one who didn't eat. She was indirectly ruining her own body, indirectly committing suicide. Junliuya's cold aura made the maids in the hall not dare to breathe loudly. Chapter 25:31. Throw it all away and cook another bowl of porridge, he ordered coldly. The maids complied and retreated. Junliuya slowly walked to the bed and looked down at her. Are you seeking death in disguise? She didn't answer and didn't even bat an eyelash. Junliuya sat beside her bed and touched her forehead. She didn't have a fever and her forehead was cool. Her breathing was also stable. He guessed that she just didn't want to talk to him. Why do you have to be like this? People who starve to death can't be reincarnated and will always suffer the pain of starvation in hell. He deliberately scared her. The person on the bed still didn't move. She was as quiet as a porcelain doll. June Lioye said many more things in succession. Threats, jokes, promises, and all kinds of tricks, but the person on the bed was like a shell that had lost its soul. She didn't react at all. June Lioye sneered. Looks like you're determined to die. Then this prince won't stop you. If you starve for a day, your parents will starve for a day. If you starve to death, your parents will starve to death as well. You'll both starve to death and never be reincarnated. These words were full of threats. He was an iron-blooded Azura war god. No one would doubt the truth of his words. The person on the bed trembled and finally opened her eyes. Her once clear eyes were now like a dried-up pool. She expressionlessly looked at June Lioye. Do you only know this move? Her voice was hoarse and full of contempt. June Lioye's eyes flashed with a trace of embarrassment, but it disappeared too quickly for Ji-Yu to see. She only heard his cold voice. You're the one who doesn't understand the situation and went against our agreement. Ji-Yu refuted. I didn't go against the agreement. I'm already your woman, but you're seeking death. Did this prince say, I'd only want you once? Ji-Yu glared at him. You? Then how long will it take for you to let me go? She looked like she couldn't wait to get rid of him. June Lioye's anger rose. Well, I'm done playing with you. Don't worry, it won't be long. I usually don't have an interest in a woman for too long. These words were clearly hurtful. Ji-Yu slowly bit her lip and only replied with one word. Okay. After saying this word, she closed her eyes and refused to say another word. After a short while, the nutritious porridge was cooked again and served. This time, Ji-Yu didn't refuse. The maid blew on the porridge and put it to her mouth, and she swallowed it. June Lioye sat by her side and heaved a sigh of relief when he saw her like this. He stood up and wanted to go out for a walk. Just as he reached the door, he heard a wah behind him, followed by the sound of vomiting. Was she doing this on purpose? June Lioye abruptly turned around and saw that she had spat out all the food that she had forced herself to eat, along with large mouthfuls of blood. Your wife should be a hot-tempered person who can't stand being angered. Right now, she's feeling a knot in her heart, but she can't vent it at all. That's why she's vomiting blood. A heart disease needs to be treated with heart medicine. Your Highness, you could try to console her or let her vent it out. As long as the anger in her heart dissipates and she takes a few of this commoner's prescriptions, she'll be cured. The doctor who was invited was the most famous genius doctor in the city. After he finished speaking, he left behind a prescription. June Lioye returned to the bedroom and sat in front of Ji-Yu's bed. He held her hand that was exposed outside of the blanket. The small hand that used to be soft felt a little uncomfortable and cold, but the palm of his hand was a little warm. Chapter 25:32. However, she didn't faint. Instead, she stared at him with wide eyes and said in a hoarse voice, I didn't vomit on purpose. You don't starve my parents. Her heart felt like it was being pulled by countless threads. It was very painful. June Lioye looked at her quietly. For the first time, he understood that she was different from him. He had been through blood and fire to reach where he was now. Both his body and heart had been tempered to be harder than a rock. He could withstand any kind of wind and rain. She, on the other hand, had been raised in a greenhouse and had never seen real wind and frost. Now, she was defeated by this sudden change. She was like a flower in a rainstorm, about to wither at any time. His eyes seemed to be filled with countless storms. He suddenly bent down and picked her up with the blanket. She cried out in surprise and curled up in the blanket. What are you doing? I'm taking you out for a walk. He carried her and walked out in large strides. Prepare the carriage. She didn't say anything and just lay in his arms. She used to hug his neck when she was frightened, but now she only curled up her body. When he was about to step into the prepared carriage, one of his bodyguards couldn't help but come forward to dissuade him. Master, you haven't rested for 3 days and 2 nights. It's not good for you to tire yourself out. He didn't finish his words. June Lioye's sharp gaze shut him up. He just silently jumped into the carriage. Huiwei Kingdom's #1 expert was willing to be the general's coachman. June Lioye, however, did not appreciate the gesture and kicked him down. He only instructed, "Watch over the house for this prince." With a shake of the reins, the horse neighed and the carriage rushed out. The carriage was moving at an unusually fast speed, but it was very stable. Ji lay on the soft cushion in the carriage and didn't feel any bumps at all. The carriage was very spacious and had 3 windows. At this moment, the windows were open. The crystal curtains jingled like a string of silver bells under the blowing wind. The wind also blew into the carriage and onto Ji's body. She hadn't felt the wind outside for 3 days. The wind was very fresh and seemed to blow away some of the shadows in her heart. At first, she could still hear the noise of the crowd as the carriage passed through the streets. Later, the carriage stopped for a moment, as if it had reached the city gate and was stopped by the city gate officials. But it was only for a moment, because when the soldiers saw the person driving the carriage, they all knelt down. Your Highness. Jun Liuye ignored him and drove straight out of the city gates, rushing onto the main road. There was a lot of discussion behind the carriage. Everyone was guessing what kind of person could make the god of war personally drive the carriage. Some people even guessed that the person in the carriage was the emperor. When Jiu came out, she was still a little groggy, but after being blown by the fresh wind outside, her spirit came back a little. Where did he want to take her in such a fiery manner? Jiu couldn't guess what he was thinking. 2 hours had passed, and the wind that blew in from the outside was getting fresher and fresher, bringing with it the fragrance of plants. Jun Liuye had been driving the carriage outside and had never come in. Jiu hadn't come out for a long time. She was greedy for the fresh air, so she slowly sat up and leaned against the wall of the carriage, letting the wind blow more directly. She also breathed more freely. It was inevitable that people would feel depressed if they were cooped up in the house. Once they came out and were blown by the wind outside, their mood would be better. Ji's stomach was originally full. Chapter 25:33. Ji's stomach had always been full. Even if she vomited until there was nothing left, she still felt bloated. After this ventilation, the bloated feeling lightened quite a bit. The crystal curtain kept swaying beside her, so Ji simply raised her hand to lift it up. Everything was green. They had already entered the mountain path. Green trees, red, yellow, and purple flowers kept passing by the carriage. The carriage also slowed down. Only the crystal curtain made a crisp sound. She also saw Jun Liuye. He was sitting in front of the carriage with his back to her. The whip in his hand would occasionally fly out and sweep across the horse's back. He did not whip the horses, but the loud sound of the whip made the 2 horses obedient, not daring to make any mistakes. This person was a noble prince. She never thought that he would be so skilled at driving carriage. He was an expert at controlling horses. Not only did he know how to control horses, he also knew how to control people. His subordinates were all loyal to him. No matter the wind or rain, they would not betray him. As for her imperial father, once the country was destroyed, not a single loyal follower could be found. He had been imprisoned for so many days. Aside from her useless daughter, no one else had tried to save him. Jiu country had been destroyed, but the people of Jiu country had not. They were still happy and harmonious, not caring if the sky above their heads had changed. Even if she managed to save her parents, the hope of reviving the country was very slim. After all, she could not find any allies outside. Jiu slightly closed her eyes, suppressing the despair and irritation in her heart. The carriage stopped on a small hill. Jun Liuye lifted the curtain and looked at her with a smile that was not a smile. "Do you want me to carry you down, or do you want to come down yourself?" Jiu did not look at him, but she quickly replied, "I'll come down myself." She was still a bit dizzy, but she still climbed down the carriage on her own. Jun Liuye stood to the side, not showing any intention of helping her. After she steadied herself, he walked forward with large strides. "Come with me." Ji did not know what he wanted to do. She pursed her lips and followed. Jun Liuye had been walking in front of her on the left, just missing the distance of 1 step. It was not far, not close, not slanted. After getting off the car, Ji realized that this was a dead end. At the end of the road was this hillside, and below the hillside was a straight cliff. Jun Liuye led her to the edge of the cliff, which was very steep. White clouds swirled around the bottom of the cliff, making it impossible to see the bottom at a glance. Her body was weak to begin with, and when she looked down, she felt even more dizzy. He couldn't help but take a step back. Jun Liuye had been silently observing her every move. Seeing her action, the corners of his lips curled up slightly. He pulled her to the edge of the cliff and sat down. Below them was an extremely dangerous cliff. If they fell, they might not even be able to find a single bone. Jiyu's body was a little tense, and her small hand subconsciously grabbed the protruding corner of the stone beside her. Jiyu, how do you feel now? Jun Liuye finally spoke. Jiyu looked at him warily and said stiffly, "What do you mean? My mood." Jun Liuye simply spat out these two words and simply lay there with a grass stick in his mouth. He looked quite relaxed and wasn't afraid that Jiyu would take the opportunity to stab him. Jiyu naturally wouldn't foolishly take this risk. No matter how relaxed and lazy this person was, he was not a house cat that could be plotted against. He was a leopard, a valiant and elegant leopard that made people not dare to act rashly by his side. Chapter 25-34. Jiyu only pursed her lips and did not say anything. The view here was broad. Sitting here, one could see the mountain peaks of different heights and the winding mountain roads in the distance. The mountain wind whistled around her, bringing with it the unique fresh air of the mountains. It also opened her heart up quite a bit. 9 out of 10 things in this world don't go your way. When you encounter difficulties, you have to think of a way to overcome them, and not be dispirited and seek death. Jun Liuye pulled out a gourd of wine from who knows where and raised his head to take a sip. He then said a string of words that sounded like chicken soup for the soul. Jiyu still did not say anything, but her pair of large eyes dimmed. How could her difficulties be easily overcome? She simply could not see any hope at all. "I'm different from you. I grew up in the palace, and my mother was an unfavored concubine. Who knows how many people wanted to kill us? I slept with my mother in a cold palace full of cockroaches and rats. I saw with my own eyes how my mother was framed and given a white silk, and she died in front of my eyes. At the age of 10, I was thrown into the deep mountains as a jinx to fend for myself." Jun Liuye slowly opened his mouth, actually telling Jiyu about his life. Seeing him so proud of his success now, she did not expect his childhood to be so miserable. Jiyu slowly blurted out, "Then you met an expert master in the deep mountains?" Jun Liuye did not look at her, and shook his head with a bitter smile. "You've read too many novels, haven't you? How could I be so lucky back then? I didn't meet any expert master in the deep mountains, but I was almost torn to shreds by wild wolves." "Then how did you learn your martial arts?" Jun Liu spat out the grass stick and calmly said, "I trained myself in life and death battles with wolves, insects, tigers, and leopards in the deep mountains. Although they almost took my life many times, they also taught me a lot of things." Many martial arts masters have been inspired by fighting with animals and created their own set of martial arts. As for Jun Liuye, he was a martial arts prodigy and was often in precarious situations of life and death. After a long time, he naturally created his own unique set of martial arts, which also trained him to be as sharp as a wild beast's perception and reaction speed. Ji didn't say anything as she listened to Jun Liuye continue. "I left the mountain when I was 16 years old. I didn't return to the palace and directly entered the military camp. I learned how to read and use my own abilities to climb up step by step. I went from an unknown little soldier to a swift cavalry general using the name Yi Qianshang. It also made it impossible for my father not to notice my existence. He had so many children that he had long forgotten about my existence. When he found out that I was his son, he restored my identity and gave me the title of Prince Jin. The conflict between the members of the royal family is very fierce. If you're not careful, you will fall into their trap. They can easily make up a crime for you and take your life. I was wrongly imprisoned and tortured, but in the end, I survived and walked step by step to where I am now." Now he was in a high position, and even his father did not dare provoke him. He was the Prince Jin and the Grand Marshal. He had fought in all directions and had become the famous Iron Blood King. As for those who had persecuted him in the past, most of them had been coldly retaliated against by him. Now they had scattered and turned into several pieces of bones. Growing up like this, his heart was naturally as cold as iron. He pursued the policy of those who followed him would prosper, and those who opposed him would perish. He had spent his entire life in darkness, but Ji was the light in his dark life. He subconsciously grabbed onto her and did not want to let go. I don't know how many times I've fallen into despair in my life. If I was like you, I don't know how many times I would have died. Jun Liuye slowly sat up and placed a hand on her shoulder. His eyes sparkled as he looked at her. Tell me the truth. Do you still want to die? Chapter 25:35. Ji Yu's body stiffened. Jun Liuye continued. Death is actually very easy. Just close your eyes and jump down, and everything will be over. You don't have to care about your father and mother. Ji Yu stiffened even more and glared at him angrily. Jun Liuye was expressionless. You don't have to look at me. If you really jump, I won't stop you. Death is an action of a coward. I won't feel sorry for you. I'll only look down on you. Ji Yu, the wind blew, and the atmosphere was a bit heavy. No one could truly face death calmly. Ji Yu was only a 16-year-old child after all. She was like a flower that hadn't fully bloomed yet. It took a lot of courage for her to face death so realistically. Her body moved slightly, and Jun Liuye's fingertips stiffened. He faintly said, Don't blame me for not telling you. People who fall to their deaths will also experience the pain of falling to their deaths in the underworld. Their souls will also be fragmented, wailing under the cliff every day without relief. Ji Yu's heart trembled. She glared at him, her eyes wide open. You're bluffing. Jun Liuye lay down again, looking like he didn't care if she believed him or not. This prince has rolled around in a pile of corpses before. In this life, I've seen the dead the most. Naturally, I've also seen some souls who died with grievances, so I know some bizarre things. Those souls on the battlefield were all missing limbs. Some even kept calling for their heads to come back. They must put their bodies back together and return to normal before they can be released. If you fall from such a high place, you'll definitely be smashed to pieces. It'll be very difficult for you to put yourself back together. Although Ji Yu still refused to admit defeat, her fingers tightly grasped the sharp stone beside her. Her legs also shrank back. Although Jun Liuye had been looking up at the sky, none of her small movements escaped his senses. The corner of his lips curled up slightly. He raised his hand and put it on her shoulder. How about it? Have you thought it through? Ji Yu's entire body was tense. His sudden outstretched hand made her tremble in fright. Her body swayed, and she almost fell off the cliff. Her small hand subconsciously grabbed his sleeve. Her heart was in a fierce struggle. Jun Liuye suddenly stood up. In that case, I'll make the decision for you. His arms suddenly wrapped around her waist. Without waiting for her to react, he jumped off the cliff. Ji Yu was already extremely nervous. Now that her body was suddenly in the air, her heart almost jumped out of her chest as she screamed. The wind howled, but her screams were louder than the wind. Before she could stop screaming, she suddenly felt her body stop. She stopped for a moment, but before she could catch her breath, her body fell again. She screamed again. In less than 10 seconds, she felt like she was going to faint. She couldn't see anything clearly, only the fear of death. She didn't know when she landed on the ground, nor did she know where she landed. She didn't even know if she was alive or dead. How does it feel? A voice sounded in his ears. It was so far away that it seemed to come from the horizon, but it was also clearly echoing in his ears. Ji Yu trembled as she opened her eyes, only to find herself in Jun Liuye's embrace. Her body was tightly pressed against him, and her hands and legs were coiled around his body like an octopus. At this moment, they were standing on a mountain path at the bottom of the cliff. Jun Liuye hugged her and leaned against a tree. Chapter 25:36. Jun Liuye hugged her and leaned against a tree. He looked down at her in his arms and smiled like a devil. How does it feel to jump off a cliff? Do you want to do it again? I'm the one hugging you this time. Next time, I won't be hugging you. You pervert. Jiyu's entire body was trembling. Even her voice was trembling. Her fingers clutched him even tighter. Jun Lioye lifted his leg and kicked something on the ground. When we fell just now, we unfortunately hit a rabbit in the air. Look at its dead state. Jiyu's gaze turned to his feet. Beneath his feet was the dead rabbit that had fallen beyond recognition. Jiyu let out a short scream and immediately looked away. You're scared already? Jun Lioye stared into her eyes. If a person fell, they'd be even worse off. Jiyu's hands and feet were cold. Her entire body was weak and her stomach was overturning. She lay on Jun Lioye's shoulder and vomited. She didn't have much in her stomach, so she vomited mouthfuls of yellow liquid all over Jun Lioye's shoulder and clothes. Jun Lioye didn't dodge and let her vomit. It seemed that he had really scared her. However, if he didn't use such a cruel method, he probably wouldn't be able to dispel her thoughts of seeking death. He carried her and walked a few steps away. He gently patted her back to help her breathe. You're a pervert. You're a pervert. You're a pervert. Jiyu only had this sentence left in her mouth over and over again. In the process of falling just now, her voice had become hoarse from shouting. Jun Lioye's palm pressed against her back and quietly helped her circulate blood through her palace. Finally, she stopped vomiting. Jiyu rubbed her eyes and gradually came back to her senses. Her body was too weak, and she didn't even have the strength to grit her teeth. Seeing him carry her forward in large strides, she couldn't help but ask, "Where are you taking me now?" Jun Lioye asked a completely unrelated question. Do you think my body smells good or bad? She had just vomited all over him. How good could it smell? Jiyu stood up in disgust and distanced herself from his shoulder. It stinks. Jun Lioye laughed. I thought you were so scared that you couldn't feel anything. Turns out you can still smell. It is indeed smelly. After all, this is all the depression that you have accumulated in your stomach. Jiyu was taken aback. After a round of tossing and turning, the bloated feeling in her stomach finally disappeared. Although she still didn't have any strength, she felt a lot more relaxed. He was obviously very familiar with the terrain here. After a few twists and turns, he arrived at the side of a pool. He placed Jiyu next to a big rock. This big rock was in a good position. There were huge rocks on both sides to block the wind. The big rock was also very flat, and it was very comfortable to sit on. Then, under Jiyu's stunned gaze, he took off his clothes and jumped into the pool with a splash. His movements were too smooth, and his speed was also very fast. When he stripped naked and jumped in, he turned around in the water and asked with a smile that was not a smile, "Have you seen enough? Isn't your husband's figure quite impressive?" Only then did she realize that she had watched the entire process. Her pretty face turned red and she snorted. She turned her face away from him, but her heart was beating wildly. Although she had been intimate with him once, she had been filled with grief and indignation at that time, and the room was dark, so she hadn't paid attention to his figure. Now that she had accidentally seen it, her heart felt a little uncomfortable. Broad shoulders and narrow hips. There was not a single bit of fat on his body. He was well-proportioned and firm. Chapter 25:37. He had broad shoulders and narrow hips, and there was not a single bit of fat on his body. His body was well-proportioned and firm, and his lines were extraordinarily smooth. It faintly revealed a kind of powerful strength. It was completely different from his casual and elegant appearance when he wore loose robes. He looked more like a demon. Although Jiyu did not move her eyes away, her thoughts were not on him. She only saw his general outline and faintly saw that there seemed to be many scars on his body. She closed her eyes, and her heart was in a mess. Hate. Naturally, she still hated him. She hated him as much as she loved him in the past. However, after being tormented like this, she actually did not have the thought of seeking death anymore. Her mind was filled with thoughts of what to do next. After all, she was still young and did not have any ideas at the moment. While she was lost in thought, there was a splash not far away. She subconsciously opened her eyes and saw him half floating there, with only half of his chest exposed. His black hair was completely wet and half spread on the surface of the water. Droplets of water flowed on his white, jade-like skin. He half tilted his head and looked at her with a smile that was not a smile. Ji-yu, do you want to consider jumping into the lake to die? Ji-yu was speechless. She had the urge to throw a stone at him. Jun-liu lazily said, "Actually, drowning to death is not a bad way to die. You won't know anything after flopping around in the water for a while. At most, you'll choke on the water and feel a little uncomfortable. When you're drowning, you'll be helpless and bleed a little when you die. Actually, there's nothing to be afraid of." Ji-yu felt a little cold and had the urge to drown him in the water. Jun-liu simply opened the door of imagination. Also, drinking medicine is not bad. It's just that your stomach hurts so much that you want to cut yourself open with a knife. You'll bleed from your orifices and your face will be bruised or swollen. Although it's a little disgusting, a dead person doesn't need to care about their face. Cutting your neck is also fine. I'm just afraid that if you don't do it well, you'll only cut your neck in half. Blood will spurt far away, but you won't die immediately and will just stay there and suffer. Or if you overdo it and directly cut off your head, you'll die happily, but the way you die is too scary. What's worse is that you'll have to find your own head in the netherworld. Oh, there's also hanging. It'll be very suffocating, so suffocating that you'll regret being born. Your tongue is so long. He even deliberately stuck out his tongue and rolled his eyes. The more he spoke, the scarier he became. Ji-yu was so scared that she had goosebumps all over her body. She didn't expect him to be so funny. He even made her have a psychological shadow of death. She really wanted to stuff his mouth with something, but she couldn't find him. Shut up. Shut up. When he was talking about the nth way to die, she finally picked up a big stone and threw it at him. Shut up. Io. He sank into the water with the stone and did not move for a long time. Ji-yu squinted her eyes and looked at the water surface. She naturally didn't believe that he would be killed by her stone in the water. After the time it took for an incense stick to burn, a splash appeared on the surface of the water. A pair of hands stretched out and made a struggling action on the surface of the water. The splash was very loud, which made Ji-yu's heart jump. The hands struggled on the surface of the water for a moment, then sank back into the water. Ji-yu only saw a line of water quickly moving away. Could it be that some monster in the water dragged him away? Ji-yu couldn't help but stand up. She stared at the line of water, her heart beating fast. Occasionally, she lowered her head and was stunned for a moment. She realized that the clothes he left on the shore were also gone. Chapter 25:38. She didn't even know when the clothes disappeared. Was it haunted? Was there a water ghost in the water? Ji-yu's mind was filled with the terrifying rumors of water ghosts. She couldn't help but run in the direction of the water line. She didn't know what to look for or what to chase. The water surface had already returned to its calm state, and the water line had long disappeared. The pool was as deep as usual, and nothing strange could be seen. Ji-yu finally stopped and stood on the shore in a daze. She didn't know what to think. If Jun-liu really died here, then she would have gotten her revenge. She should be happy. However, she was panicking inside. As time passed, her hands and feet became colder and colder. She told herself that she wasn't worried about him, but if he died, her parents would no longer be safe. If she couldn't save them, she would become an orphan and wander alone in this world. She stood there in a daze when someone patted her shoulder from behind. Worried about me? Ji was caught off guard and was frightened by this pat, almost falling into the water. Careful! Her waist was hooked by someone. She suddenly turned around and met a pair of deep and smiling eyes. She opened her mouth slightly and looked as if she had seen a ghost. You, Jun-liu, who was supposed to be in the water, stood behind her with his clothes fluttering. He was still wearing his purple robe, but his body was dry as if he had just returned from a walk. Her shocked expression pleased him. He carried her to sit on a rock and asked, "You weren't worried about me?" He was breathing and had a heartbeat. Even his body was warm. Naturally, he wasn't a dead person or a water ghost. Ji quickly returned to her senses and snorted. I was worried that you didn't drown. Now it seems that my worries weren't unnecessary. What a heartless girl. Junliu didn't get angry and even smiled. I knew you would say that. You're not creative at all. Jiyu angrily said, I really thought so. Who's joking with you? I know you're sincere. More sincere than real gold. That should be enough, right? Junliu propped his head up and looked at her. His narrow eyes curved like the moon as he smiled. Do you still want to say that everything is just my wishful thinking? Jiyu was speechless. He had said everything she wanted to say. She didn't know what to say anymore. Her eyes stared at his robe. It was clearly the same robe as before, but she had clearly vomited all over him. Why was it all gone now? It was so clean that not a speck of dust could be seen. He kept hugging her, and she could even smell the faint fragrance on his body. Right now, Jiyu's emotions were practically written all over her face. Junliu was used to reading people's minds, so he naturally knew what she was puzzled about. He simply hugged her and laid her down on the big rock. Are you curious about my clothes? Jiyu was forced to lie on top of him. She couldn't break free even if she wanted to, and she felt pressured if she kept looking at him. She simply turned her head away. I'm not curious about this. She said that she wasn't curious, but her eyes glanced at his shoulder a few times. Junliu could not help but laugh again. He raised a hand to turn her face back to him. You don't want to know, but I'm going to tell you. I just dragged my clothes into the water and washed them. Then, I used my internal energy to quickly dry them and refresh myself at the same time. Jiyu, his martial arts were pretty good. From the time he dragged the clothes away, washed them, dried them, and put them on, it took less than half a quarter of an hour. Chapter 25:39. It was just stealing clothes. Was there a need to make such a big fuss? She even thought that he had been dragged away by a water ghost. He forced her to look at him. She could not turn her head away, so she simply glared at him and pursed her lips without saying a word. Junliu suddenly raised his head and kissed her lips. Ji froze, but he only kissed her lightly and calmly let go of her. He smiled and said, Jiyu, you look like a bulging little bun when you're angry. He hugged her and sat up again. After being fooled by him, Ji no longer had any thoughts of seeking death. She did not want to be so close to him, but she could not break free from his embrace several times. All right, we've messed around until now. Are you hungry? Junliu asked her. I'm not hungry. Jiyu turned her head. Her stomach made a few untimely growls. Actually, she just realized that she was really hungry. She was so hungry that her chest was sticking to her back. Strange, she had not eaten anything for the past 2 days. Her stomach was still full, so she did not feel hungry at all. But now she was actually this hungry. She did not know that she had been feeling depressed for the past few days, so her stomach was full. Junliu had accompanied her for a round. She had vomited and screamed, so the stuffiness in her chest had mostly been released. In addition to his special scaring, she had developed a fear of death, so she naturally gave up on the idea of suicide. Her mood was no longer the same as before, so her body's functions had returned to normal. It was natural that she would be hungry now. She was indeed hungry, but where could she find food in this place where there were no shops to be found? Her large eyes revealed her doubts, but Junliu carried her and stood up. Your stomach is more honest than your mouth. Let's go. I'll take you to eat a good meal. Junliu did not lie to her. He really did take her to eat a good meal. There was a pot of delicious fish soup. The fish soup was rich and fragrant. It was boiled in a jar with a roaring fire below. Junliu had only taken her around a corner when they saw the scene of a picnic. The fish soup was very nourishing, especially for a girl like Jiyu who had been hungry for a few days. It was a delicacy among delicacies. She carefully controlled herself, but she still unknowingly drank 2 bowls. After drinking 2 bowls, she still wanted more. Her gaze would sweep across the jar from time to time. There was still about half a bowl left. Does it taste good? Junliu sat there with one leg bent and the other stretched out. He didn't drink much, and Jiyu had almost finished the entire jar. Jiyu's face heated up. She snorted and turned her head away. A moment later, she turned her head and found that there was another half bowl of snow-white fish meat in her bowl. Eat it. You'll recover faster if you eat this. Junlia handed the bowl to her. Ji didn't want to take it, but she was still hungry. However, if she were to take it over just like that, she would feel indignant. She seemed to be too obedient to him. You can only think about saving your parents and taking revenge after you recover. Why do you have to make life difficult for yourself? Ji stiffened for a moment. After a while, she finally took the bowl and ate it slowly without making a sound. She had to live on and save her parents. She finished half a bowl of fish and felt a little strange. There was so much fish, but she didn't see a single bone. Could it be that the fish didn't have any bones? I've already picked out all the bones. You can't see them yourself, Jun Lyoye said with a smile, even pointing at the pile of fish bones to the side as proof. Chapter 2540. Ji did not say anything. She looked at him with a complicated gaze. Looks like what he said about his childhood was true. This person's ability to survive in the wild was not ordinary. If he could survive in such a difficult situation, why couldn't she? It's not like she had any less limbs than him. Ji was also filled with confidence. The two of them sat facing each other, occasionally exchanging a few words. A cool breeze circled between the two of them, giving them a sense of tranquility that would accompany each other until the end of time. However, this tranquility did not last for long before it was forcefully interrupted by someone. The one who interrupted them was a group of assassins in black. It cannot be denied that Jun Lyoye was indeed the #1 assassin in the world. Whether it was intuition or reaction, they were all top-notch. Ji did not have time to react before Jun Lyoye suddenly threw her to the ground. Then, with a quick roll, Ji heard the sound of countless hidden weapons whistling in her ears. When Jun Lyoye jumped up with her in his arms, she saw that the place where she was sitting was densely filled with all kinds of hidden weapons. Every hidden weapon was shining with a light blue light. It was obvious that they were all highly toxic. Then, there was a dazzling mess of figures. Ji's martial arts were not bad, but she was clearly not good enough here. Jun Lyoye carried her and moved around in the crowd. She could not even see the two sides clearly. She could only see all kinds of knives and swords greeting her body, but not a single weapon actually cut her body. They all missed by a hair's breadth. There was a muffled groan, blood spurting out, and figures falling down. Ji only felt dazzled. When she completely woke up, the dust had already settled in front of her. Jun Lyoye carried her and stood on a withered tree stump. Behind them, there were more than 10 assassins' corpses. The black cloth on each corpse's face had been removed, and there was a deep, fatal wound on each corpse's throat. Jun Lyoye carried her with his left hand while blood slowly dripped from the tip of the sword of his right hand. In less than a moment, he had dealt with 15 assassins. His actions were straightforward and ruthless, killing them in one move. He did not even let them make a sound. You could almost feel the cold, murderous aura on his body. Why didn't you leave one alive to interrogate? You looked at the corpses on the ground. Although she frequently saw dead people these past few days, seeing so many now, she still felt a little dizzy. However, his heart was pounding. These people couldn't be the former imperial family members of Jiu country, right? Are they here to avenge the Jiu dynasty? However, these people's faces were unfamiliar, and she did not recognize any of them. There's no need to keep them, Jun Lyoye said simply. He knew who had sent them. That person would send people to assassinate him whenever he was alone, which annoyed him immensely. Jiu misunderstood. Her eyes lit up and she said proudly, "My Jiu country still has some loyal people. They are here to avenge their country." Jun Lyoye glanced at her and patted her head to soothe her. "You're overthinking things. They're not from Jiu country." "Jiu, master, we were late and caused you to be disturbed. Please punish us." A figure flashed in the distance and appeared in front of the two in the blink of an eye. The 8 of them knelt down and begged for forgiveness. These 8 people were the masters of the Dark Shadow Tower, and Jiu knew more than half of them. Allowing the enemy to sneak into our encirclement without us noticing is the fault of the patrol. You should cripple one of your own eyes. Jun Liu Yi ordered indifferently. Chapter 2541. Ji Yu's heart skipped a beat. The punishment was this harsh? Third brother, they've already fulfilled their duties. Isn't this punishment a bit too heavy? A voice suddenly came from the bamboo forest not far away. A handsome youth in luxurious clothes fluttered out. This youth and Jun Liuye's eyebrows were somewhat similar, so there was no need to ask. This was his brother. Old Eighth, what are you doing here instead of being in the Alliance's fan city? Jun Liuye raised an eyebrow. I've been ordered to come and see third brother. Eighth Prince Jun Lufeng smiled. His gaze fell on Ji Yu's body, faintly complicated. This is the little princess that made third brother so happy that he forgot home. She's really pretty. Jun Liuye cut him off. If you have something to say, go back and talk. Forgive me for not accompanying you. He directly jumped into a luxurious carriage that had just arrived. Hey, third brother. I came from afar to read the imperial edict. Won't you give me a ride? Jun Lufeng jumped into the carriage. A whip swept out from the carriage, accompanied by Jun Liuye's cold words. Go ride your own horse. Jun Lufeng subconsciously floated and flipped out of the carriage. At least he wasn't whipped, but he could only watch as the carriage left under the escort of the imperial bodyguards. So heartless. He actually chased the imperial envoy off the carriage. Jun Lufeng rubbed his nose and sighed. He obediently went to find his horse. Hey, I don't want to be carried around by you like a doll. After Ji Yu was carried into the carriage, she was forced to sit beside him. She felt a bit unhappy and moved to the side. Jun Liuye didn't force her this time. He smiled and simply laid down on the soft cushion, closing his eyes. Ji Yu looked out at the scenery. Although she no longer had any thoughts of seeking death, the irritation in her heart didn't lessen by much. Her parents were clearly imprisoned in this person's hands. Why couldn't he make the decision to release them? Was it just to threaten her to stay by his side? She hardened her heart and said, Can you let my parents go? After you let them go, I won't leave. I'll stay by your side until you're tired of me. She could only lower herself under someone else's roof. But there was no movement behind her. Ji Yu frowned and turned around, only to find that his breathing was steady and his eyes were slightly closed. He had actually fallen asleep. How could such an alert person fall asleep in a carriage? Ji Yu didn't quite believe him. She glanced at him again and suddenly had an idea. There were faint shadows under his eyes. Those were the dark circles under his eyes. He seemed to be very tired. She then recalled what the guard had said when they rushed out of Shadow Tower. Jun Liuye hadn't rested for 3 days and 2 nights. Looks like he's really exhausted. Ji Yu breathed a sigh of relief, looking at his sleeping face in a daze. Now was the perfect opportunity to assassinate him. Too bad her dagger was confiscated by him. Otherwise, her gaze stopped at his waist where his treasured sword was hanging. She had seen him make a move before, and this sword was not just any ordinary sharp. She slowly reached out her hand, her fingers gently touching the sword at his waist. With her current level of martial arts, she could quickly draw her sword and slit his throat in an instant. He was sleeping so soundly that he definitely wouldn't notice. Her eyes were filled with intense emotions. Her fingertips slowly grasped the sword hilt, but she didn't have the courage to pull it out. If she killed him now, she was afraid that she wouldn't be able to save her parents. To kill him alone, she had to sacrifice the lives of 3 people on her side. Chapter 2542. To kill him alone, she had to sacrifice the lives of 3 people on her side. It wasn't worth it. Ji Yu finally withdrew her hand. Although she didn't make a move, she was already so nervous that she broke out in a cold sweat. She sat back in her original position and leaned against the carriage, closing her eyes. After all, her body was weak, and she had been tormented by Jun Liuye for so long. Once she closed her eyes, she immediately felt sleepy and fell asleep in a daze. She was woken up by someone. Hey, we're home. We should get off the carriage. The voice was low and magnetic, and the heat was by her ear. She opened her eyes in a daze. When she realized her situation, her face turned completely red. She had actually slept in Jun Lioye's arms and hugged his waist like a koala. What was worse was that one of her legs was stuck between his legs, tightly pressing against his rather sensitive area. She could even feel the special hardness of that area. She froze for a moment, then suddenly let go of his body and rolled to the side. She angrily said, "You took advantage of me while I was sleeping." Jun Lioye slowly sat up and said coolly, "Eldest miss, I didn't move at all, okay? You were the one who rolled over and insisted on throwing yourself into my arms, so I could only reluctantly hug you. Oh, my arms are going to be numb from your weight." Ji-yu. She found that the more she talked to him, the more the hatred in her heart faded. She simply shut her mouth and stopped talking. Jun Lioye seemed to be in a good mood. He hugged her and kissed her on the lips. "Little Moon, I like it very much." Ji-yu pushed him away in a flurry. "What are you happy about? Let go of me." "Third brother, don't be in a hurry to flirt with people. I think you should first come out and set up the incense table to receive the imperial edict." Jun Liofeng's voice came from outside. This guy actually ran quite fast. Jun Lioye frowned slightly and patted Ji-yu's shoulder. "Let someone send you back first." He opened the door and jumped off the carriage. She didn't know what he said to the coachman, but after he got off, the carriage continued to move forward with Ji-yu. Ji-yu opened the curtain and looked outside. She saw that this place was the former Ji-yu country's imperial palace. The carriage was heading in the direction of her former residence, Chiyue Palace. Several voices came from behind. One of them was a woman's voice. "Greetings to the Third Highness. Third brother, don't look at me. It has nothing to do with me." It was Miss Hong Xiang who insisted on following. Ji-yu hadn't returned to this place since the fall of her country. Now that she had set foot here again, she felt as if a lifetime had passed. She remembered that when she escaped that day, the soldiers of the Huiyue kingdom broke into the Chiyue Palace. They not only killed people, but also smashed many things. She didn't expect that everything had been restored to its original state when she came back this time. Even the two maids waiting for her in the palace were the same maids from before. "Princess." The two maids came up to greet her, their expressions mixed with joy and sorrow. Ji-yu didn't expect to see them again. She was happy, but also a little sour in her heart. Originally, she was their princess. Now, not only was she the princess of Fallen Country, but she had also been reduced to the third prince's woman. She couldn't even be considered a concubine. At that time, they had already fled for their lives. Now that they had been recruited back here, they must have submitted to the Huiyue kingdom. No matter what, it was good enough that they could survive. It was a pity that her most trusted maidservant, Little Liang, would never come back. The two maids were well aware of Ji-yu's temperament, so naturally, they were familiar with serving her. Chapter 2543. Everything seemed to be the same as before, but Ji-yu could still sense the subtle differences. For example, although these two people were still as friendly to her as before, their expressions were no longer as respectful as before. The way they looked at her was a bit strange. However, Ji-yu was not paying attention to this. Her attention was already attracted by the imperial edict mentioned by the 8th prince. What was the content of the imperial edict? Could it be about how to deal with her royal father and mother? If the imperial edict was unfavorable to her royal father and mother, what would Jun Lioye do? The imperial edict was as important as the sky, then her royal father and mother might. The more she thought, the more flustered she became. She turned and ran outside. "Princess, where are you going?" The two maids were surprised and hurriedly stopped her. "I'm going out for a walk." Ji did not stop. "Princess, you can't." The third prince said that you can only move around in this Chiyue hall and cannot go anywhere else. One of the maids knelt down. "Princess, you must be tired. You should stay here at ease. The third prince will come to see you tonight." The other maid also knelt down. Ji-yu's heart turned cold. These two maids were once her personal maids. When she escaped from the palace to play, it was these two who gave her advice and were extremely loyal. Although they still called her princess now, they were already people sent by Jun Lioye to watch over her. She sneered, "Who are you people?" The two maids choked and lowered their heads. "Princess, Don't make things difficult for us. There were countless guards patrolling outside Chiyue Hall. Although Ji was confident that she could knock out these two maids within 10 moves, it would definitely cause a big commotion. At that time, the guards outside would be attracted, and she would still not be able to escape. Her face was pale, and she was in a dilemma. One of the maids' eyes flashed, and she suddenly raised her hand to knock out the other maid beside her. Ji looked up in surprise. The maid had already said, "Princess, wear clothes and go out." Jiyu's heart was warm, and her eyes were dry. Since the fall of the country, this was the first time she met someone who was loyal to her. Xiao Shui, thank you. I'm just going out to take a look. I'll be back soon. I won't let you be punished. Jiyu and Xiao Shui quickly took off the clothes of the maid who had fainted and switched places with Jiyu. Then they helped the maid onto the bed and let her pretend to be the sleeping Jiyu and let down the bed curtain. Jiyu quickly traversed through the palace. She was wearing the clothes of a maid. As expected, she sneaked out of the Chiyue Palace and headed towards the Red Cloud's palace. As she expected, Jun Luyi and the others should be discussing something there. Her light body technique was not bad, and she was wearing a maid's uniform that did not reveal anything. In addition, she was very familiar with the geography. Very quickly, she reached the periphery of Red Cloud's palace without any mishap. The Red Cloud's palace used to be the imperial study of the former Jiyu country's ruler. There were obviously more guards here than in other places. If she took the usual route, Jiyu naturally wouldn't be able to sneak in. However, she knew of the secret passageway that led to the Red Cloud's palace. Originally, for fun, she would often use this secret passageway to enter the Red Cloud's palace to scare her imperial father, who was in a meeting with the officials. Now that she was the princess of a fallen country, the one sitting on the high throne was no longer her father, but someone else. Third brother, Brother Crown Prince reported you in front of imperial father. He said that you left the emperor of Jiyu country with evil intentions. That's why imperial father issued this imperial edict. Third brother, I don't understand. What do you want to do with Jiyun Tian and his wife? This doesn't suit your style. Chapter 2544. There were 3 people in the Red Cloud Hall who seemed to be discussing something. Jun Liuye, Jun Lufeng, and a girl in purple. Jun Liuye looked a little sleepy as he sat on the main seat with his hand supporting his forehead. Jun Lufeng sat on the chair to his left with a serious expression on his handsome face. The girl in purple stood behind Jun Liuye, her small hands moving around his shoulders as if she was helping him unblock his muscles and bones. Her appearance was very intimate. Jiyu didn't know who this girl in purple was, but since she was here to discuss something, it meant that her status wasn't low. Seeing her movements so natural, it proved that her relationship with Jun Liuye wasn't shallow. It was rumored that Jun Liuye didn't get close to women. It seemed that the rumors were just rumors. Not only did he force Jiyu to be his woman without any status, he was also so intimate with this girl in purple. Jiyu hid behind a screen at the end of the secret passage. The moment she saw the girl in purple, her heart turned cold. Although she was naive, a woman's intuition was still very sharp. This girl in purple liked and adored Jun Liuye. As for Jun Liuye, she didn't know if he loved this girl in purple, but at least he didn't reject her being so close to him. He should like her, right? Perhaps this girl in purple was his confidant in the country, the one he loved in his heart. And his relationship with Jiyu was just a show, a simple scheme. Jiyu's hands and feet were a little cold. She secretly took a breath and closed her eyes to calm her mind. She and Jun Liuye had an irreconcilable enmity, so she didn't care about Jun Liuye's feelings. She only cared about her parents. Listening to their tone, that imperial edict was indeed harmful to her parents. What would Jun Liuye do? She suppressed her heartbeat and continued to listen. Third brother, you also know that imperial father has always been suspicious. If you do this, I'm afraid he will be afraid of you. How about no way? Ji and Tian and his wife are still useful. You can't kill them. Jun Liuye finally spoke. Jun Lufeng raised his eyebrows. Third brother, Now that the people of Ji have completely surrendered, there shouldn't be a need to use Ji Tian and his wife to win people's hearts, right? After all, they are the leaders of Ji. As long as they are alive, some of the old powers of Ji won't be willing, and there will be many variables. Third elder brother, you were the one who said to cut the weeds and pull up the roots. Why are you leaving behind such a big trouble now? That's right, big brother Lu Yi. What can they do? Keeping them alive now would do more harm than good. My father also said that it's not a good time to go against the imperial edict. The purple-clothed woman also tried to persuade him. Ji Yu's heart tightened. Jun Liuye remained unmoved. I have my own plans. You don't have to say anything. Third brother. You can't be like what the crown prince reported. The reason why you kept Ji Yun Tian and his wife was because you were mesmerized by the little princess's beauty, right? You once said to your soldiers that women's charms are harmful to the country. Good men will never be charmed by women's charms. They should prioritize their cause. That won't happen. Brother Lu Yi has never been close to women. Who knows how many beautiful women in the Huiyue kingdom want to marry him, but he doesn't care. Why would he be willing to risk everything for a fallen princess? Big brother Lu Ye's actions are unpredictable, but he definitely has a military purpose. Don't you think so, Brother Lu Yi? Jun Liuye smiled and didn't refute. Jun Liufeng's interest was piqued. He tapped his fan against his palm and said, "Then let this little brother guess." Chapter 25:45. Jun Liufeng's interest was piqued. Tapping his fan against his palm, he said, "Then let me guess. Oh, I heard that there are still remnants of Jiyu country secretly moving around outside of Ziyu City. Is third brother thinking of using Ji Tian and his wife as bait to attract those people? To catch them all in one fell swoop?" Jun Liuye smiled. "Lu Feng, you're quite smart this time." He actually admitted it in a roundabout way. Jun Lufeng let out a sigh of relief and smiled. "I knew it." Third brother, this Azura war god, suddenly became benevolent. "Ha, so that's how it is. That's good." He seemed to have thought of something. "That's right, third brother, you've been treating that little princess quite well recently. You don't really want to take her in, do you?" Jun Liuye didn't answer. Jun Lufeng frowned. "Third brother, I know you know what to do, but that little princess and you have an irreconcilable enmity. I'm afraid she has ulterior motives by your side. Moreover, Father Emperor and the court officials will definitely oppose it." The purple-clothed girl looked at Jun Liuye's expression and carefully said, "Brother Liuye, it's not that I'm jealous or can't tolerate her. It's because of her identity. According to the rules, a princess of a fallen country can't be married to a prince as a concubine. Most of them are servants." Jun Liuye's voice was indifferent. "Don't worry. No matter what happens in the future, she will have nothing to do with you. I also won't take her as a concubine." This sentence seemed to have a deeper meaning. The purple-clothed girl's eyes lit up, and she pressed even more attentively on his back. "Then I'm relieved." Jun Lufeng also laughed and punched Jun Liuye's shoulder. "I'm also relieved. That's right. I heard that this Princess Ji was born on the night of the full moon. When she was born, a strange fragrance filled the room. That's why Ji Yun Tian treasured her and said she was the reincarnation of the moon god. The people of Jiyu country also hold her in high esteem. Third brother keeping her by your side also has the intention of using her as bait, right?" The three of them chatted there, causing Ji Yu's heart to turn cold. Her limbs went soft, and she almost couldn't stand. The place she was hiding in was very well hidden. There were special, sound-absorbing decorations around her. As long as she didn't make any big movements, no one outside would be able to find her. She held her breath and retreated bit by bit, slipping out of the secret passage and out of Red Cloud's palace. As soon as she stepped out of the secret passage, she tripped and didn't even notice that her knee was bruised. When he looked up, the setting sun was as red as blood, and the world seemed to be filled with desolation. She stood where she was and was momentarily at a loss. At that moment, she didn't seem to be thinking about anything and couldn't remember anything. "Hey, which palace's maid are you? Why are you standing there like idiots?" A shout came from a group of patrolling guards not far away. Jiyu lowered her head and answered absent-mindedly, I'm from the Chiyua Palace. I lost my way. I'm sorry, I'm sorry. In this palace, it was indeed common for maids to pass through, so the guards did not suspect anything. One of the guards even kindly instructed, right now, Ji and Tian, that incapable ruler is not allowed to wander around the palace. Quickly go back. Ji nodded and slowly left with her head lowered. Although her beauty was different from ordinary women, her eyes were staring blankly and her expression was blank. She looked a little silly. Behind her came the guard's discussion. No wonder such a beautiful girl is only a maid. She's a silly one. Ji Yu's legs were soft. She walked aimlessly and didn't know where she should go. Her legs were soft, so she sat down on a big stone. Chapter 25:46. This place was very secluded, and no one came to disturb her for the time being. She sat there for almost an hour. The blood in her chest was boiling as if it wanted to gush out of her throat, but she forcefully swallowed it back down. Originally, she thought that although Jun Liuye had destroyed her country, he still had some feelings for her. When he said that he would find a way to release her parents, she secretly believed him. She thought that since he was not the emperor, he had his own helplessness, but he still thought about her in his heart. Now, it seemed that she had been thinking too much. He was the ruthless demon prince. He was only using her parents. The truth was so cruel that it was like a knife that cut open her heart while she was still alive. It shattered all her hopes and dragged her back to the bloody reality. The only thing that comforted her was that there were still remnants of her father's old subordinates. They must be thinking of ways to save their master. However, this place was heavily guarded. Jun Liuye must have set up layers of traps here and waited for those people to fall into it. If she wanted to save her parents, she needed to find a spy from the palace. But she was not free now. How could she contact those old subordinates? How about she take this chance to escape? Escape from the city first. She suddenly stood up. She used to sneak out of the palace to play, so she knew where to escape to the shortest and safest route. But after taking a few steps, she paused again. There were faint sounds of chaos in the direction of Chiyua Palace. After a while, she heard the sound of chaotic footsteps all around. The patrolling guards heard the sound and moved. Princess Jiyu is missing. His Highness is furious. The entire palace is under martial law and a strict search is ordered. Close the door. Not even a fly is allowed to fly out. Jiyu hid in the dark and faintly heard someone shouting orders. She clenched her fingers and knew that she could not escape. She stood in place for a moment, then suddenly sprinted towards the southeast corner. Not far from here was the palace where her parents were imprisoned. She did not deliberately hide her figure. Before she could run to the palace, she was discovered by the guards who were searching for her. They all came forward to stop her. Jiyu threw caution to the wind and punched and kicked. Get out of the way. I want to see my parents. Get out. Get out of the way. She was like a crazy tiger cub. The guards received orders to capture her alive and not hurt her. Naturally, they were restrained. She kicked a few of them over and sent a few of them flying. Chi! A gust of wind came from behind. This sound was clearly different from the usual. Jiyu quickly dodged, barely dodging the attack. A blue robe flashed in front of her eyes, and a handsome young master appeared out of thin air. Princess Jiyu, so you are here. This handsome young man was Jun Lufeng. His martial arts were obviously good as he directly blocked Jiyu's path. Jiyu didn't give him any face. Get lost. She attacked him fiercely. Jun Lufeng didn't expect her to be so unreasonable. He waved his fan. Princess, if you have something to say, we can talk it out. His kung fu was obviously passed down from Jun Liuye, and there were some similarities. Although his kung fu was not as good as Jun Liuye's, it was still remarkable. It was not something Jiyu's kung fu could withstand. A moment later, Jiyu had already been attacked to the left and right by him. She was distracted for a moment, and her acupoints were sealed by his folding fan. Her body went soft, and she slid down. Jun Lufeng still had the air of a gentleman. He subconsciously extended his arm to support her. Suddenly, a gust of wind shot toward his arm. Jun Lufeng was startled and hurriedly retreated. When he stood still, he found that little Princess Ji Yu had fallen into Jun Liuya's arms. Chapter 25:47. Jun Liuya's face sank as he undid Ji Yu's acupoint. "Why are you running around?" Ji Yu blinked and burst into tears. "I want to see my father and mother." She cried like a pear blossom in the rain. Jun Liuya's voice unconsciously softened. "If you want to see them, wait for me to come back. I'll naturally take you to see them. Why did you run away?" Ji Yu's tears kept falling. "I dreamt that they met with an accident and were killed. So she had a nightmare first. That's why." Jun Liuya's arm tightened. "They won't meet with any accidents in the palace. Don't worry. If you want to see them in the future, just tell me, and I'll naturally take you to see them." Ji Yu's eyelashes were still wet with tears. "Really? Why would I lie to you? Don't I want to see them right now?" Jun Liuya's eyes flashed, and his handsome face sank. "No, I haven't punished you yet for running away." Ji Yu's tears rolled down drop by drop. "I only wanted to see my father and mother. You didn't come back. I had a nightmare and couldn't wait." Her small hands clenched his lapel tightly as she cried like a tearful doll. Jun Liuya rubbed his forehead with a headache and took a step back. "Only this once. There won't be a next time." Ji Yu's eyes lit up. "Okay." Jun Liuya carried her and left. When he looked up, he saw Jun Lufeng standing there and looking at him in shock. It was as if he saw a big monkey jump out of the bridal chamber. His footsteps paused, and he indifferently glanced at Jun Lufeng, then walked around him. Jun Lufeng watched their backs disappear from the palace gates and waved his fan thoughtfully. "My brother Azura actually has a day when he's so gentle to a woman. Although it's all an act, isn't this acting a bit too much?" Ji Yu finally saw her parents again. However, because she sneaked out this time, Jun Liuya only allowed her to say a few words to her parents as punishment before bringing her back. Because the two maids covered her escape, Jun Liuya ordered for them to be severely punished. He ordered for them to be beaten 20 times each. Ji Yu naturally stopped them and took all the blame on herself, saying that she forced them to do so. Her face had always been pale, and when she pleaded, her tears seemed to fall. Her large eyes seemed to be able to speak as she stared intently at Jun Liuya. Finally, Jun Liuya's heart softened once more. He was just about to agree to let the two maids go. A delicate voice chuckled. "Nothing can be accomplished without rules. Young Miss and young Master made a mistake, but it's ultimately the fault of the attendants. Don't you think so, Brother Liuya?" Ji Yu raised her head and saw the purple-clothed girl, Hong Xiang, walk in. Behind her was Jun Lufeng. Jun Lufeng didn't say anything. He just looked at everything thoughtfully. Jun Liuya's handsome face turned cold. "If they were really doing their jobs for your own good, they wouldn't have let you go. Men, take him away and punish him 20 times." 4 guards came in and dragged Xiao Shui and Xiao Yu away without any explanation. Ji Yu was unwilling to give up and wanted to stop them again, but Jun Liuya casually pointed at her. She could only watch as the two were dragged away. A moment later, the sound of the paddles and the two's miserable groans could be heard from outside. Xiao Shui's scream was the loudest and most mournful. This sound was like a heavy hammer pounding on Ji Yu's heart. She wanted to plead again, but Jun Liuya sealed her mute acupoint, so she couldn't say a single word. Chapter 25:48. From the corner of her eyes, she saw Hong Xiang leaning against a pillar and looking at her with a smile. She couldn't hide the gloating in her eyes. Hearing this woman's tone, she should be Jun Liuya's fiancée. Seeing her future husband punish a disobedient bed slave, she would naturally be happy. As for Jun Liuya, he was acting so pretentious to give his fiancée an explanation so that she wouldn't be jealous. This husband and wife really have a tacit understanding. Ji Yu's blood rushed up again. She forced herself to endure the sweet taste of blood in her throat. In this cold palace, she was the only one fighting. She had to take care of her body and not fall down. Only then would she have any hope of saving her parents. The sound of beating and screams outside finally stopped, for guards carried the two maids, who were badly mutilated, back into the room. The two maids groaned and almost fainted. Jun Lioye then lifted his finger to unseal Ji-Yu's acupoints. He thought that Ji-Yu would immediately rush over to check on their injuries, but he didn't expect her to just stand there like a wooden puppet. Her long eyelashes covered her eyes, making it impossible to see what she was thinking. This is a small punishment. Seeing that you were forced, this prince will spare your worthless lives. Men, carry the two of them to the doctor's office to treat their injuries. Once they're healed, they can serve your princess. Jun Lioye coldly ordered. The two maids naturally bowed to express their gratitude. No need. I don't want their service. I don't need anyone to serve me. Ji-Yu finally spoke, her voice cold and crisp. After saying this, she didn't even look at the people in the courtyard and directly walked into the hall. With a bang, the door was tightly shut. Jun Lioye was stunned. He waved his hand and had the two maids be carried away. Brother Lioye, this princess's temper isn't small. Hong Xiang bitterly smiled. Even this little sister doesn't dare. Jun Lioye glanced at her and said with a smile that wasn't a smile, "You want me to treat you like I treat her?" Hong Xiang stuck out her tongue and said with a double meaning, "I don't dare." Jun Lufeng walked over to remind him, "Third brother, we still have things to do. You guys wait outside first." Jun Lioye's voice was cold as he turned around and pushed open the tightly shut doors to enter. Hong Xiang opened her mouth as if she wanted to say something, but Jun Lufeng gave her a meaningful glance and then said, "Okay, we'll go to the front and wait." Without any explanation, he led Hong Xiang out. Inside the hall, Ji-Yu was sitting on a chair with her eyes lowered. When she heard Jun Lioye enter, she didn't say a word. She didn't even raise her head. "Ji-Yu, do you hate me?" Jun Lioye sat down opposite her. Ji-Yu did not answer, nor did she react. "It may not be for your own good that your two maids are being stolen. The palace is heavily guarded. You can't escape it all. You can only be convicted." Ji-Yu still didn't answer. She didn't even bat an eyelid. "Ji-Yu, look at me." Jun Lioye pressed one hand on her shoulder and forced her to raise her chin with the other. Ji-Yu's gaze finally fell on his face. Her once lively eyes were now like a deep pool, completely devoid of emotion. This was the first time Jun Lioye had seen her like this. He suddenly felt a trace of panic in his heart. This little girl was used to revealing her emotions. Usually, even if she didn't speak, he could guess what she was thinking just by looking at her rich expressions. But now, she had hidden all her emotions. He couldn't read her at all. "Ji-Yu, everything isn't as simple as you think." Chapter 2549. Ji-Yu, everything isn't as simple as you think. Jun Lioye seemed to want to explain something to her, but he stopped halfway and changed his words. He paused for a moment and changed his words. "Anyway, I'll do it for your own good in the future. You have to believe me. All right, you must be tired after today's torment. Rest first. I'll come and accompany you in the evening." He carried her to the bed and habitually kissed her forehead, but she slightly tilted her head to avoid him. Jun Lioye's eyes darkened, and he turned to leave. Naturally, he wouldn't really not give Ji-Yu a maid. After he left, he sent two more maids in to serve her. Because of the previous two maids, as an example, the new maids were especially careful when serving her. Ji-Yu was very stable this time. She didn't cry or make a fuss. Naturally, she didn't go on a hunger strike. She even ate quite a lot during dinner. After dinner, she went to bed and slept. When Jun Lioye returned, it was already late at night. He asked about Ji-Yu's situation and heard the maid's honest report. He sighed in relief, but faintly felt that it was a little strange. She seemed to have changed a little. He walked into the bedroom and slowly sat by the bed. Looking at her sleeping peacefully, he was lost in thought for a moment. She slept very peacefully. Her breathing was calm, and her eyelashes were long. Only the roots of her eyelashes were a little wet. It was obvious that she had cried before. Jun Lioye bent down and kissed her eyelashes. Her eyelashes brushed against his lips, making it a little itchy. Jun Liuye's eyes darkened, and he wanted to use a special method to wake her up, but seeing the faint dark circles under her eyes, he held back and looked down at her for a long time. He sighed and raised his hand to tuck her in before turning to leave. The room returned to its original silence. Ji slowly opened her eyes. Liar! She opened her mouth slightly and silently spat out these two words. She closed her eyes again. Her road was still very long and difficult. She still needed to use strategies. Perhaps in order to make it up to her, Jun Yuya brought her to visit her parents again the next day. He even gave her an hour to spend alone time with her parents. This was exactly what Ji wanted. She chatted with her parents and indirectly asked how many of Ji-Yu's loyal soldiers had escaped. Who could possibly be the old subordinates outside who wanted to rescue them? But even after Ji and Tian thought for a long time, he still could not come up with a reason. Most of his loyal subordinates had either died or surrendered. The city had been destroyed so quickly that he had no idea who had escaped. However, when he heard that some of his former subordinates were still active outside, he heaved a sigh of relief. A glimmer of hope rose in his despairing heart. Thinking about it, he gave Ji-Yu a dragon-patterned jade pendant and told her that it could be used as a token to contact the people outside. Ji-Yu carefully put it away. When the time came, she came out obediently. Jun Liuye did not expect her to be so sensible this time. Usually, when she saw her parents, she would need to urge them 3 or 4 times before reluctantly coming out. Why don't you talk to them more? Jun Liuye asked with a smile, raising his hand to hold hers. Ji-Yu calmly dodged the attack and continued walking forward. Jun Liuye's eyes flashed as he forcefully grabbed her hand. Where do you want to go? Ji-Yu subconsciously wanted to withdraw her hand, but he held it so tightly that she couldn't. She did not waste her effort and lowered her eyes. Don't you want to go back to Chiyue Palace? Although she did not make a fuss, her expression was still listless like a frosted eggplant. Chapter 2550. Jun Liuye looked at her and finally said, Do you want to go out and play? Ji-Yu's eyes finally lit up as she asked, I can go out. Jun Liuye did not answer, but bent over and picked her up. I'll take you out. In a rather luxurious restaurant. This time, after Jun Liuye strolled around the streets, he brought her to this restaurant at noon. Of course, to avoid trouble, Jun Liuye did not disguise her, but he still let her wear a weft hat to cover her face. As for himself, he was dressed in casual clothes with a silver mask covering the upper half of his face, only revealing a pair of sparkling eyes and beautiful curved lips. He looked like an elegant, rich young master. Jun Liuye originally wanted to take her to a quiet room upstairs, but she did not want to. She liked places with many people. Jun Liuye glanced at her and complied. He brought her to a rather remote table in the hall and sat down. Ji-Yu held a cup of tea in her hand. Her face did not change, but a trace of hope rose in her heart. Since father's old subordinates were moving around outside, perhaps they had already mixed into the city. Restaurants and tea houses were the fastest places to spread news, but they were also the most crowded places. Perhaps they would come here. She secretly hung the dragon-patterned jade pendant her father gave her at her waist. Under the sunlight, the jade pendant seemed to glow. If those people were really here, they would definitely notice this jade pendant. Of course, she also secretly observed the people around her, hoping to see 1 or 2 familiar faces. But after her eyes looked around, the light in her eyes dimmed again. She did not see anyone familiar, and no one paid attention to her. Her method of looking for people was like looking for a needle in a haystack, but other than this method, she could not think of any other way. The commoners who were drinking here were naturally people from Jiyu Empire. There wasn't any hatred for the destruction of their empire from these people, and each and every one of them was happy and harmonious. It was no different from before the country was destroyed. Jiyu looked at it and felt a little dazzling. She raised her head and drank a cup of wine, feeling a little dispirited. The conversation at the table next to her suddenly attracted her attention. It was the Azura war god Jun Liuye. Her heart moved, and she held her cup to listen. The more she listened, the tighter her fingers held the cup. Those people were praising Jun Luyi. They praised him for his strict military discipline and for not offending the people when the army entered the city. They even opened the granary and gave the people food several times. Furthermore, ever since his army had set up camp in the city, the security in the city had improved significantly. Previously, there were many thieves in the city, but now, not a single one of them could be seen. These people's praises also attracted heated discussions from the other tables. Jiyu thought that someone would refute, but she didn't expect that these people would basically agree and praise Jun Luyi as a peerless hero. Jiyu glanced at Jun Luoye. Jun Luoye was wearing a mask, so Jiyu could only see his slightly pursed lips. She looked away and sneered in her heart. She tilted her head back and drank a glass of wine. He deliberately said, "Everyone, no matter how wise this third Prince Jun is, he is still the main culprit behind the destruction of Jiyu Kingdom. As the people of Jiyu Kingdom, don't you think it's inappropriate for you to praise the enemy who destroyed your kingdom?" Her words were sonorous and forceful, but no one responded to her. Instead, it attracted a bunch of different opinions. Someone retorted, "Miss, have you become stupid from reading too much? The world that is united for a long time must be divided, and divided for a long time must be united. The rivers and mountains of one family cannot last long." Chapter 25:51. Someone quoted the classics to her. "Little girl, let me give you some knowledge. The Cloud Underworld continent used to belong to the Purple Moon Empire 100 years ago, and the one who sat on the throne was from the Jun family. 60 years ago, it was divided into countless small countries. Later, these small countries annexed each other, and today, there are 3 countries and other affiliated countries. These countries have been fighting with each other, and the wars have been endless. It's just a few families who are fighting for territory, but it's us who are suffering. The ancestor of the Ji family was just a general of the Jun family 100 years ago. Yes, the rise and fall of the people are suffering. We have long been tired of these days of fighting and killing. The people will support whoever gives them a stable life. If this third Prince Jun can really unify this continent and free the people from the suffering of war, the people will naturally support him. Yes, a fine bird chooses a good tree to nest in, and we also choose a good ruler to support." Jiyu had never heard of these theories, but they seemed to be reasonable. Jiyu paused for a while and then said, "What you said is simply heartless. Didn't that Emperor Yuanyu give you a good life? He didn't start any wars." Someone sneered again. "Emperor Yuanyu? That fatuous ruler? What else can he do other than composing poems? He only believes in the good words of treacherous officials and doesn't listen to any advice from loyal officials. How many virtuous officials has he persecuted? In order to celebrate his precious daughter's birthday, he imposed a 30% tax on the people. Who knows how many people have lost their homes because of him?" Someone even looked at Jiyu. "Little girl, have you been living in some kind of paradise before? How come you don't know anything? You don't know about other things, but you should know about the drought in Tiangong State last year, right? The whole state had no harvest, and that fatuous ruler not only did not exempt them, but also increased the tax by 30%. How many people were killed because of him? That year, there were starving people everywhere. There were many people who died of starvation on the streets. The people had no way to survive and revolted, but they were suppressed by the fatuous ruler. Those who revolted were just ordinary people who couldn't survive. As long as they were given food, they would naturally be good people. But after these people surrendered, how did the fatuous ruler deal with them? An imperial edict was issued, and 50,000 people were buried alive. Now Tiangong State is a ghost town. These people started to talk about the atrocities of Full Moon Emperor. Suddenly, there was an uproar. At first, Jiyu's face turned pale, but then she clenched her fists. This must be a trap set up by Jun Luyi. He had purposely lured her here. The words that these people were saying must have been taught long ago, just to let her hear them. He wanted her to understand that the June family's extermination of GU country was an irresistible trend. It was the will of the heavens and the will of the people. The truth was definitely not like that. Her imperial father was so kind. How could he be a tyrant? Slander. Despicable. Pie. The teacup in her hand was crushed by her. June Lioya's expression changed. He grabbed her hand and forcefully pried it open. There were a few pieces of porcelain stuck in her palm, and blood was quickly seeping out. Damn it! June Lioya cursed under his breath and picked out the pieces of porcelain. He then called for someone to bring some clean water to clean her wounds. During this period, Jiyu struggled countless times, but was forcefully restrained by him. After cleaning her wounds, he applied some medicine on her wounds and bandaged them. The commotion at her table had successfully stopped those people from criticizing the full moon emperor. Chapter 25:52. Everyone looked at each other in dismay. Under June Lioya's cold aura, they finally shut their mouths and went on to discuss other things. Jiyu, these people weren't instigated by this prince. June Lioya brought her out of the restaurant. She was injured and naturally couldn't move around. June Lioya clapped his hands a few times, and a hidden guard drove a carriage out of the shadows and stopped in front of the two. June Lioya wanted to help her into the carriage, but she flung him away. She jumped into the carriage herself and got in. June Lioya stopped under the carriage and then got in as well. He explained to her in a deep voice, "Liar, liar." Jiyu's entire body was trembling. She bit her lips and closed her eyes, refusing to say a word. June Lioya looked at her for a moment. "You don't believe me? Believe him?" If she believed him again, she would be the #1 fool in the world. This person was using her for everything. In order to make her willing, he would do anything. The atmosphere in the carriage was a bit stiff. Although Jiyu didn't say anything, her body language said one thing: "I don't believe you." She refused to believe him again. June Lioya suddenly smiled and leaned against the carriage. "You're sure that these people were arranged by this prince, right?" Jiyu still didn't answer. "Do you think this prince would do something so senseless? Would he make such a low-level mistake?" June Lioya's voice was cold. Jiyu bit her lips. The people in the restaurant looked like ordinary people and didn't seem like they were arranged by someone. Could it be that what they said was true? No, of course not. Her imperial father was the most benevolent imperial father. He definitely wouldn't be as cruel as those people said. Fake. It's all fake. He was only using her. He was treating her well now with a motive. In order to make her willing, he deliberately sent people to slander her imperial father. It must be like this. She had to believe in her imperial father. The only person she could trust now was her imperial father. She couldn't help but touch the jade pendant on her waist as if she wanted to gain some energy from it. Today, she came out empty-handed. She didn't see half of her imperial father's old subordinates. No, she couldn't fall out with June Lioya now. Otherwise, he might fly into a rage and not let her out again. She couldn't reveal her true feelings since he knew how to act. Then she knew how to act too. Jiyu slowly raised her head and bit her lips. "You're right. This mistake is indeed very low level. It doesn't seem like something someone like you would do. Maybe I really misunderstood you." In order to increase her sincerity, Jiyu took the initiative to put her hand in his. "You don't be angry. I just don't believe imperial father is like this." Her last sentence was soft and even a little nasal. June Lioya slowly reached out and hugged her. "I'm not angry. It's good that you understand." Jiyu took the opportunity to lean her head on his shoulder. "I'm a little bored and don't want to go back to the palace. Can you take me around again?" June Lioya looked at her in his arms and sighed. "All right." The storm seemed to have passed just like that. The two of them walked around the streets, drank tea in a tea house, went to a theater, and even went to the bridge to watch a juggling show. You was probably really bored in the palace for too long. After coming out, she liked to join the crowd and go wherever there were many people. Of course, June Lioya accompanied her the entire time. Ji played outside for 3 days. In these 3 days, she still didn't contact any of her old subordinates. Chapter 25:53. Ji played outside for 3 days. In these 3 days, she still didn't contact any of her old subordinates. Instead, she heard a lot of gossip about her father in the tea houses, wine shops, and streets. Although the content was different from what she heard in the restaurant that day, the meaning was similar. Her father wasn't a benevolent ruler in these people's eyes, but a fatuous ruler. Ji Yu's demise didn't make these people feel grief or indignation. Instead, it was as if they had escaped from a sea of bitterness. Even the children playing on the streets sang this kind of nursery rhyme. Ji Yu's heart sank. These tea houses and wine shops were all because she pulled Jun Lyoye into them on the spur of the moment. Jun Lyoye shouldn't have had time to arrange for people to slander her father. Moreover, people with this kind of view could be seen everywhere. Jun Lyoye couldn't have bribed all the people in the city to be his accomplices, right? Moreover, Ji Yu couldn't help but admit that Ziyu City was much more prosperous than before. The people seemed to be living and working in peace. Even the beggars on the streets were much less than before. Could it be that her father was really a fatuous ruler? Ji Yu subconsciously didn't believe this, but all the signs made her believe it. In the end, she didn't think about this problem anymore. Only one thought circled her mind. Whether her father was a fatuous ruler or a wise ruler, he was still the one who loved her the most. She must save her father and mother. Even if she didn't restore the country, it would be good to just live in seclusion in the fields. She still didn't find anything in these 3 days. No one contacted her. The so-called old subordinates seemed to be a dream. Were they too afraid of being caught and hid too well? Or was she using the wrong method? Or was it because Jun Lyoye was always by her side, so those old subordinates didn't dare to contact her because they were afraid of being exposed? Yes, it must be the last reason. But how could it be easy to get rid of Jun Lyoye? These few days, Jun Lyoye had been accompanying her. They traveled during the day and slept together at night. The two of them had already broken through the last line of defense. Jun Lyoye naturally didn't want to waste their beautiful time together. He wanted her almost every night. In order to make him lower his guard, Ji Yu didn't reject him. Occasionally, she would even respond when they were being intimate. Of course, Jun Lyoye had been very good to her. Whenever he had time, he would take her out to play and walk hand in hand with her. He didn't even try to hide it from his suspected fiancée. That time, when Jun Lyoye had brought her out, they had walked across Hong Xiang in the palace. Ji Yu had seen with her own eyes how Hong Xiang's face had turned pale, but she had still forced a smile to greet Jun Lyoye. Jun Lyoye had only nodded at Hong Xiang, then pulled Ji Yu's hand and left. He did not even look back, as if he did not care about his fiancée at all. He was really good to her, so good that all the maids in the palace were jealous. If she hadn't eavesdropped on their conversation in the Red Cloud's palace that day, Ji Yu would have foolishly fallen in again. Only by replaying those words in her mind over and over again every night could she stop herself from falling in love with him. Princess, please look towards the southeast window. In an inconspicuous tea house, Ji Yu was drinking tea alone when a child in tattered clothes suddenly ran over and asked her for money. She took out one tael of silver and gave it to the child. When the child took the money, he also stuffed a note into her hand. This was the content of the note. Chapter 25:54. Ji Yu calmly hid the note in her sleeve and looked in that direction. There was an inconspicuous man sitting at the table. He had a sallow complexion and a small mustache. His appearance was very ordinary, and he was the kind of person who would not be recognized even if he was thrown into a crowd. However, his eyes were a little familiar. Seeing Ji Yu looking over, he smiled at her and casually raised his teacup. The white jade ring on his finger shone brightly. It's him. Ji Yu's heart jumped. Maybe because she had been very obedient these days, Jun Lyoye let down his guard. After accompanying her for 3 days, he had other matters to attend to. He was so busy that he was dizzy from day to night. After 2 days of being cooped up in the palace, Ji Yu was a little listless. She asked to go out for a walk. Jun Liuye pondered for a moment and then agreed. However, he sent 4 shadow guards with strong martial arts to follow her. Ji Yu took the 4 shadow guards for a day. In the afternoon, she went to a tea house to have afternoon tea. She didn't expect to get such a pleasant surprise. The person who passed her the note was none other than the son of Ji Yu's great general, Wu Qianxi, Wu Liqian. Wu Qianxi was very favored by the emperor and had the highest position among the generals. He had military power and was equivalent to the general of the army. He was also very loyal to the emperor. It was rumored that he died when Ji Yu's city fell. Wu Liqian, on the other hand, was his youngest son. He was good at martial arts and was 3 years older than Ji Yu. He played with Ji Yu when they were young and could be considered as childhood sweethearts. When he grew up, he had a special feeling for Ji Yu. He once asked his father to propose to the emperor on his behalf. However, at that time, Ji Yu was too playful and didn't have any feelings for Wu Liqian. She refused without thinking. The emperor naturally wouldn't force his daughter, and the marriage was canceled. Fortunately, Wu Liqian didn't care and still treated Ji Yu well. He took care of her like an older brother. Every time he saw her, he would be at her beck and call. After the city fell, Ji Yu didn't have any news about him. She thought he had died for the country. She didn't expect to meet him here. Could he be father's old subordinate? Most likely. Wu Liqian changed his appearance. If it wasn't for the ring, Ji Yu wouldn't dare to recognize him. Of course, he couldn't go up and acknowledge her now. She still had 4 of Jun Liuye's shadow guards by her side. She glanced at Wu Liqian again, her mind quickly thinking of how to get rid of the 4 dark guards and Wu Liqian. Wu Liqian lowered his head and wrote something on a piece of paper, then quietly put it under his teacup. Then, he glanced at Ji Yu again, then called the waiter to pay the bill and got up to leave. As soon as he left, Ji Yu also called the waiter to pay the bill. When she passed by the table where Wu Liqian was sitting, she deliberately bumped into the table. She staggered and took the opportunity to hold on to the table. At the same time, she also hooked the note under the teacup in her palm. Ji Yu did all of this extremely smoothly, and the 4 shadow guards following her did not see her little movements. The 4 of them were originally drinking tea at a table not far from her. When they saw her get up, they followed her out of the room. Ji Yu used the excuse of going to the toilet and read the second note left by Wu Liqian. There were only a few words on it. Stay in the earth-ranked room of the Tainyake Tavern. She had finally contacted her own people. He finally saw a glimmer of hope. She was no longer fighting alone. She now had an ally. Ji Yu's palms were sweating. She carefully destroyed the 2 notes and made sure that she didn't leave any traces behind. Then she walked out. Chapter 2555. It was natural for Ji Yu to stay in the earth room of the Tainyake Tavern. The 4 secret guards had been ordered by Jun Liuye to only be responsible for Ji Yu's personal safety and not to interfere with her fun. It was understandable that she wanted to rest in the tavern when she was tired from walking. The 4 secret guards only went into the room to check in advance. After confirming that it was safe, they asked Ji Yu to come in and rest. The 4 of them guarded the door. Ji Yu's parents were still trapped in the palace. Jun Liuye naturally knew that Ji Yu wouldn't run away, so although the 4 guards were good at martial arts, they weren't very vigilant. The 4 of them had been following her for half a day and were bored. Now that she went in to rest, the 4 of them chatted outside to pass the time. After Ji Yu entered the room, she looked around but didn't see anything left by Wu Liqian. Just as she was feeling puzzled, a light sound came from the bed. The bedboard flipped, and a person appeared out of thin air. It turned out that there was a secret passage on the bed. This person was dressed in an ordinary scholar's attire, but he had sword-like eyebrows and starry eyes. It was Wu Liqian. As soon as he came out, he gestured to Ji Yu, indicating for her to go over. Ji Yu paused for a moment, but still walked to the bed. Ji Yu, let's talk in the secret passage. It's inconvenient here. Wu Liqian transmitted his voice to her and then stretched out his hand to her. Ji Yu steeled her heart and held his hand as she jumped onto the bed. A soft sound came from the bed. It was not loud, as if a human body had casually turned over on the bed. However, after this sound, Ji-Yu's vision blurred. When she regained her composure and opened her eyes again, she was already in a dark passage. The dark passage was long and dark. Fortunately, Wu Liqian was prepared. He held a night pearl in his hand. With the light of the night pearl, Ji-Yu could barely see the surrounding scenery. She was surprised to find that Wu Liqian wasn't the only one in the secret passage. There was also a young woman. Ji-Yu suddenly had a strange feeling in her heart. She wasn't jealous of this woman, but because this woman was wearing the same clothes as her. Even their figures were very similar. As for their facial features, there were also some similarities. In the darkness, Ji-Yu thought she was looking at her twin sister. That woman kept staring at Ji-Yu, her gaze strange and penetrating. When Ji-Yu was stared at by her, she had the illusion that she could see through her bones. She is... Ji-Yu frowned. She didn't like this kind of gaze. Kai, Wu Liqian said briefly and waved his hand toward the girl. Kai, you go up. The woman nodded and pushed open the cover above the secret passage. She flipped over, and the cover returned to its original state. The woman also disappeared without a trace. What are you doing? Ji-Yu was confused. Ji-Yu, I've finally saved you. This is not the place to talk. I'll take you away. Wu Liqian didn't want to explain more, so he took Ji-Yu's hand and walked away. Ji-Yu's heart skipped a beat, but her feet didn't move. You want to take me away? Of course. Ji-Yu, I came here today to help you escape. God has mercy on me. I've been waiting for this day. You don't know how long I've been planning for this day, how many nights I couldn't sleep. Wu Liqian was still holding her hand. His eyes were full of relief. Well, let's go. I'll tell you the details after we safely escape from the city. His words were full of affection, but Ji-Yu shook her head. No, I can't go with you. Chapter 25:56. Wu Liqian frowned. Why? Ji-Yu, do you really want to stay by that Azura bastard side and be his woman? No way, right? He's the enemy who destroyed your country. Ji-Yu took a deep breath and shook her head. No, Wu Liqian, my father and mother are still in his hands and trapped in the palace. She looked at him with sparkling eyes. Have you been moving around outside the city to save them? Do you have any good ideas? Wu Liqian choked. This. He paused for a moment before saying, Ji-Yu, the matter of saving His Majesty can wait until you escape from here. For now, you should come with me. He pulled her small hand and walked away. Ji-Yu's expression changed, and she pulled her hand out of his palm. This won't do. If I escape, Jun Liuye will harm my father and mother. When Jun Liuye was with her, he had hinted that if she escaped, he wouldn't be polite to her parents anymore. Wu Liqian sighed in relief. Don't worry, Jun Liuye won't find out that you escaped. Sai will pretend to be you and stay by his side, waiting for an opportunity to kill him. Of course, she will also try to save your father and mother. Ji-Yu was stunned. Sai will pretend to be me? I'm afraid that won't work. Her appearance isn't very similar to mine. At most, it's about 30% similar. Wu Liqian looked proud. Ji-Yu, Sai is a faceless person. No matter who she pretends to be, she won't be exposed. A faceless person? Ji-Yu had heard of such people before. It was said that their bones were arranged in a strange way, especially the bones on the face, which could change shape at will. When she wanted to pretend to be someone, she would adjust her body and facial muscles to the point where she could pass off as the real person. This kind of person was born with a strong imitation ability. They only needed to look at someone for a moment to imitate their voice and movements. Even their own family members might not be able to tell the difference. Of course, this kind of person was very rare. Ji-Yu had only heard of them, but never seen them. She didn't expect to meet one today. Could she pretend to be anyone? Wu Liqian shook his head. That's not it. Because of her body, Sai can only pretend to be a slim woman. But she only looks like me about 40 to 50%. Ji-Yu's heart was in a mess, and she couldn't tell what she was feeling. Her appearance is based on my description. Now that she has seen the real you, she will naturally adjust her appearance to look exactly like you. No one would be able to tell. Even if she stays by Jun Liuye's side, Jun Liuya won't notice. Wu Liqian reassured her. Ji Yu felt extremely uncomfortable when she thought of another woman pretending to be her and staying by Jun Liuya's side. Even doing things between husband and wife. She was stunned for a moment. Wu Liqian continued. Kai's martial arts are also very good, comparable to mine. If she disguises herself as you and stays by Jun Liuya's side, she will definitely find a good opportunity to assassinate him and kill him in one fell swoop. This way, we will have avenged you and also avenged our Jiyu country. Wu Liqian's eyes sparkled. Apparently, he was very confident in Kai. Jiyu's expression changed slightly. She knew about Wu Liqian's martial arts. Although he couldn't compare to Jun Liuyi, he was still an expert among experts. Back then, Imperial Father also praised him endlessly, saying that he was the #1 expert in Jiyu country. When Jiyu rejected the marriage that day, Yuan Yu Emperor was very regretful. Now, Kai's martial arts were really as good as Wu Liqian's. Chapter 25:57. Now that Kai's martial arts were as high as Wu Liqian's, and she had disguised herself as her to stay by Jun Liuya's side, Jun Liuya would definitely not be on guard. If she were to assassinate Jun Liuya under the bed, she would most likely succeed. The image of Jun Liuya falling down with a face full of disbelief seemed to flash before her eyes. Her heart kept falling, and her hands and feet were slightly cold. She knew that she hated him, and he was the enemy who had ruthlessly used her to destroy her country. She should be hoping for his death, hoping that he would be killed. If he died, she should be very happy. But Wu Liqian did not know when he had grabbed her hand again. Jiyu, I've been worried about you these days. You've never been wronged before, and I don't know what kind of torture you'll suffer in his hands. Just thinking about it makes me unable to sleep at night. Jiyu, his words were sweet, and his eyes fell on Jiyu's face. His eyes became deeper and deeper, and his voice became deeper. Jiyu, his palm was hot, and he held her hand tightly. Jiyu subconsciously wanted to shake him off, but his fingers were holding her so tightly that she could not shake him off. His eyes were also burning, as if he wanted to swallow her up. Jiyu had never seen him like this, and her heart was slightly flustered. She struggled again. Liqian, let go of me first. Wu Liqian did not let go of her, and instead pulled her into his embrace. Jiyu, I really missed you. We're finally together. His embrace was hot, and his arms were tightly wrapped around her waist, so tight that she almost could not breathe. Jiyu's face turned red. He had never dared to treat her like this before. He had always been careful in front of her, looking at her as if she was the moon in the sky. He had never dared to force her. But now, his embrace made Jiyu irritated. She struggled a few times, but to no avail. Instead, he hugged her even tighter. Anger rose in her heart, and her face sank. She shouted, "Impudent! Wu Liqian, let go!" Her shout was quite imposing. Wu Liqian's arms stiffened, but he did not intend to let go. His eyes stared at her, and the bottom of his eyes became more passionate. Jiyu, we're together from now on. I'll treat you well. He lowered his head and kissed her. Slap! A crisp and resounding slap sounded. Jiyu couldn't break free from his grip and finally made her move. In her nervousness, she used quite a bit of strength and slapped Wu Liqian's face to the side, leaving a palm print on his weak-colored face. Wu Liqian's face suddenly changed. He grabbed her wrist and narrowed his eyes dangerously. You hit me. Jiyu, I saved you, and this is how you repay me. When he was angry, he actually had a dangerous temperament. He was as fierce as an enraged wolf. Jiyu froze. She was not used to this kind of Wu Liqian. Her wrist was almost crushed by him. She had always been afraid of pain, and her face immediately turned pale. Wu Liqian, how dare you? How dare you offend this princess? Let go. Let go of me. She struggled desperately. Although this secret passageway was tightly sealed and had good soundproofing, it was still under the guest room. If they really made too much noise, it would easily alarm the people above. The guard who was waiting outside the door heard the commotion and was worried. He immediately knocked on the door and asked, "Princess, are you all right?" Ji-Yu's lazy voice came from inside the room. "I'm fine. Princess, please open the door. There seems to be something wrong in the room. This subordinate will come in." A shadow guard was more careful. After he respectfully reported, he paused for a moment before opening the door and walking in. Chapter 25:58. It was very quiet in the room, and there was a person lying on the bed. The four secret guards quickly looked around the room, but they couldn't find anything wrong. They were still worried, so they bowed towards the bed. This subordinate asked the princess to come out. His Highness had given her to them, so they couldn't let anything happen to her. The bed curtain was gently lifted up, revealing a beautiful face. "What are you doing? Can't you let me rest?" After the four secret guards saw her face, they let out a sigh of relief. "Princess, there was a strange sound in the room. Is there something wrong?" "What's wrong?" "This princess was sleeping soundly and was woken up by you." The girl had an unhappy look on her face. The four secret guards looked at each other before bowing and saying, "Princess, please forgive us." Then they left. In the secret passage, Wu Liqian tightly covered Ji-Yu's mouth and nose, stopping her from making a noise. Hearing that it was quiet, he opened his hand a little to let her breathe, but he didn't let her go. "All right, it's my fault. Ji-Yu, don't make a noise." Ji-Yu's face turned red, almost being covered to death by his hand. She could only nod, and Wu Liqian let go of her waist, but he didn't let go of her hand. "Ji-Yu, this place is dangerous. It's not the place to talk. We can talk after we leave." He quickly pulled her forward. Ji-Yu couldn't help running a few steps with him. She was very anxious and shouted, "I can't go with you right now. Let go." She felt that something was wrong and didn't want to leave with him. "Wu Liqian, if you don't let go, I'll scream." Her body became tense. Wu Liqian gave a sigh. "All right, don't scream. I'll let go." Letting go, Ji-Yu's heart relaxed. When she was about to take her hand back, she felt a pain in the back of her head. Her vision turned dark and her body fell down. When she woke up again, she was in a rather simple and crude room. The candlelight flickered, and the room was filled with a dim yellow light. It didn't seem like a building, but rather an underground palace. She moved a bit, but her head was still dizzy and the back of her head hurt. A little maidservant was standing by the bed. When she saw her open her eyes, her face lit up with joy. "Princess, you woke up." Ji-Yu looked around and then looked at the servant girl. A bad feeling rose in her heart. "Where is this?" The servant girl smiled. "This is the place where we temporarily discuss matters. Princess, please follow this servant. The Lord invites you in." "My lord, Wu Liqian?" He knocked her out and brought her here. And now he wanted her, the princess, to meet his subordinate? Ji-Yu took a deep breath and said coldly, "Let Wu Liqian come see me." She had her own imposing manner. The young maidservant paused for a moment, then went out to call for her. A moment later, the door opened and two people walked in, one old and one young. When Ji-Yu saw the two of them clearly, she suddenly sat up. Her gaze fell on the hale and hearty old man who was walking like a tiger, and she blurted out, "General Wu." That old man was actually General Wu Tianxi, who was rumored to have died for his country. He was Wu Liqian's father. He hadn't died, but he had appeared here. Wu Tianxi laughed heartily. His voice was as loud as a bell. "My dear niece, you have suffered a lot these days." Ji-Yu's heart sank. She was the monarch, and he was the subject. He should never call her dear niece, but should prostrate himself on the ground, kowtow, and respectfully call her your highness. But now, he didn't have the slightest intention to kneel down. Chapter 25:59. Everyone, this is our honorable Princess Ji-Yu. The heavens have blessed our Ji-Yu Empire. We have finally rescued Ji-Yu Sanus. From now on, we have to work together to rebuild our Ji-Yu Empire. On a 3-feet high platform, Ji-Yu, Wu Tianxi, and Wu Liqian stood. Below the platform, there were thousands of GU Empire soldiers. Under the illumination of the surrounding torches, the soldiers' faces flickered like the soldiers of hell in the dark night. Thousands of people lined up neatly, stretching all the way to the depths of the cave. The heavens have blessed our GU Empire. We pledge our loyalty to General Wu. These people shouted together with an earth-shattering momentum. Wu Tianxi waved his hand in satisfaction and said, "GU Saintus has been engaged to my son, Lu Qian, a few days ago. From today onwards, my Wu family will take on the responsibility of restoring GU Empire. From today onwards, GU Saintus will be the Empress of GU Empire. Everyone will rebuild their homeland under her leadership." He spoke with great enthusiasm, causing the blood of the soldiers below to boil as they shouted their slogans loudly. GU stood there with a pale face, pursing her lips without saying anything. Yesterday, after she met Wu Tianxi and his son, she talked with them for a while. According to Wu Tianxi himself, that day, he fought a bloody battle with the enemy. However, he was outnumbered and lost in the end. He was supposed to die for his country, but because of his heavy injuries, he fainted on the battlefield. Wu Liqian carried him out of the pile of corpses and luckily escaped with his life. The father and son pair then secretly found a few trusted surviving generals and fled into the depths of the mountains. In the depths of the mountains, they inadvertently discovered this former dynasty mausoleum that could hold 10,000 people. They secretly contacted their old subordinates, and gradually, these several thousand soldiers were gathered. Everyone here prepared their troops and waited for the right time to restore GU Empire. A few days ago, they learned that GU was not dead, so they began to plan a rescue plan. They secretly watched for many days and finally made their move today. Wu Tianxi spoke passionately, saying a lot of plans to restore the empire, but he did not mention anything about rescuing the Full Moon Emperor. He was just asking for credit from GU. In the end, GU couldn't help but tell Wu Tianxi that her father and mother were still alive and imprisoned in the palace. She asked Wu Tianxi to find a way to save them. Wu Tianxi was vague. One moment, she said that His Majesty would definitely try to rescue her. The next moment, she said that the palace was heavily guarded. It was simply a fool's dream to rescue someone from inside. The more GU listened, the colder her heart became. This Wu Tianxi could be said to be her father's most trusted minister, and also the most loyal one. The day before yesterday, her imperial father had told her that it would be great if Wu Tianxi was one of his former subordinates. He would definitely risk his life to save them. Now, Wu Tianxi was indeed not dead, and he had gathered so many subordinates, but he had no intention of saving the emperor. Although GU was bitterly disappointed, she also knew that this was not the time to throw a princess tantrum. She could only lower her voice and beg in every possible way. Wu Tianxi readily agreed, but then he changed the topic. He said that the Full Moon Emperor used to be a slave, so he didn't do much to the existing soldiers. Now that everyone was in danger, he had no good reason to encourage these people to take such a big risk to save the Full Moon Emperor. He talked a lot, but the overall meaning was that he did not have the right to give a death order to save the Full Moon Emperor, so he must have another identity. GU naturally asked him what identity he wanted, but he told her his ultimate goal. Chapter 2560. He wanted GU to marry his son, Wu Liqian. This way, they would be a family, and he would have a legitimate reason to save the Yuanyue Emperor and his wife. His words made GU speechless, as if she was struck by lightning. Although she and Wu Liqian grew up together, she didn't have any feelings for him. Now, he wanted her to marry him. She found it hard to accept, and her first reaction was to refuse. But before she could completely refuse, Wu Tianxi raised his eyebrows and said angrily, "In this case, saving your parents is a matter of risking your life. My father and I can even risk our lives, but you can't even risk your whole life? How can you be so unfilial? Besides, Liqian is good at both martial arts and literature. How is he not good enough for you? Besides, you two grew up together. Liqian likes you very much. If you marry him, He will only treat you well, share your burdens, and serve you. Ji didn't know what to say in response to his angry words. In addition, Wu Leqian had been gently persuading her and reasoning with her. The father and son preached, one playing the good cop and the other playing the bad cop. In the end, Wu Tianxi said harshly, "Princess Jiyu, if you don't agree to such a small condition, then don't expect us to send people to save your parents. We can't persuade the other soldiers to save them." At this point, Jiyu was forced to a dead end by the father and son. Ordinary rejection was useless. She made up her mind and said, "General Wu, it's not that Jiyu doesn't know what's good for her, but Jiyu has been tainted by Jun Liuye and is no longer a virgin. I'm afraid I'm not good enough for your son." Wu Tianxi and Wu Tianxi's faces changed when they heard this. They looked at each other. In the end, Wu Tianxi said, "Jiyu, you didn't want this to happen in this chaotic world. You were forced. Uncle doesn't blame you. Liqian has always liked you. He won't dislike you." Wu Liqian also expressed his attitude, saying that he won't dislike her and will still marry her. They were determined to force her to marry him. Now that Jiyu was in their territory, she had to submit. Besides, she still needed to rely on them to save her parents. Jun Liuye's figure flashed across her mind, and her heart twisted. With such a blood feud between them, she was destined to have no fate with him. However, she was still deeply in love with him. Even though she knew that he was only using her, it wasn't that easy for her to completely abandon this relationship. She closed her eyes slightly. At this point, there was nothing she couldn't give up, and there was nothing she couldn't lose. She just wanted to save her parents, even if she had to die for it. In the end, she agreed to the father and son's request, but she also had her own conditions. The engagement had to wait until after she rescued her parents. After another round of argument, the Wu family's father and son finally agreed to Jiyu's condition. They would hold the engagement ceremony after they rescued Emperor Yuan Yu and his wife. But Wu Tianxi wanted to announce that Jiyu was her daughter-in-law at the pep rally tomorrow. Of course, he still came up with a dignified reason, saying that he was doing this to boost morale and make it easier to save people. You could only agree, which led to the scene just now. The cheers below were thunderous, but Jiyu's heart was as cold as ice. The person he loved the most was using him, and even his most loyal subjects had ulterior motives. You're tuning into the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.